Hello everyone and welcome to another stream. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. I was planning on doing Chud Watch today, and then I watched a Chud Watch video and it bummed me out, and then I was like, I'm not gonna stream today, and then I was like, I need to stream today. So I'm streaming today, but I picked a different topic. So how's it going? My understanding is that something weird's happening with YouTube. You're just gonna ride it out. Just gonna ride it out. Seems to be going okay on Twitch. You could always go to Twitch for a bit, and hope it clears up on YouTube. If Twitch fucks up, I'll restart the stream. We'll see what happens. Pterodona says, oh, full color Millerites, or full colon Millerites, rather. Yes, this is related to the, David Wynn colon Miller hyphen man. Peep Lord with 40 bits says, Jesus fucking Christ, I hate that I'm this way. A plastic clear sheet covered in a super thin layer of metal would probably conduct some electricity on one side, but it would be extremely thermally insulating because of the plastic acting as an air barrier and the metal reflect radiated heat, so it's a window tint from an old Visions of the Future VOD. Oh, from the sheet thing, I remember. Lucas Dawn, thanks for 33 months, says, I just got a new job. I'm going to be working in the legal cannabis business. Fun. Hope that goes well. So, let's get into it, shall we? So, as I said, David Wynn-Miller died, I think, in 2018, sometime around there. So his protege took over the quantum grammar scene, Russell J. Gould. So we're going to watch some videos today from Russell J. Gould and see how his time as the leader of the quantum grammar movement is going. If you don't know what quantum grammar is, it's a conspiracy theory that's kind of involved in Sovsit stuff, in that they think that they know a secret language that is the official language of the universe, and this is the only official way to write, and any contract not written in this super secret language is invalid. It's pretty kooky. So, we're gonna watch some stuff and have fun. It'll be a good time. Lance is trying to love herself, says, back in my day we had to wait for YouTube to load a bit before we could watch non-live videos in standard def. Making me feel old. Anyway, here we go.
As well as the citizens in the form
Postmaster General of the United States of Our World Corporation, legal legislator, chief judge, executioner, commander-in-chief, Postmaster General of Our World, Russell J. Gould. So, if you missed me covering the quantum grammar thing previously, they believe that the Post Service is in charge of the whole world. So they think that, like, the secret world government that a lot of conspiracy theorists believe in is the post office. So Gould here thinks that he has anointed himself as an even higher, or at least equal, Postmaster General, so that no one can be in charge of him. It's kind of like when Marcel tells people he's a judge and they're fucked, except in this case, he thinks that the Postmaster General is the highest you could be. Does that make sense? Cool. Artemis, with 37 months of Prime, says, hey Hannah, have you seen Star Trek Prodigy? I recently finished it and I think you'd really enjoy it. It's not episodic like you prefer, but it's still good. In particular, I think you'd like the Starfleet cargo cult episode with Starflight of the Federation. That sounds interesting. I actually have the first season on Blu-ray. I haven't watched it yet, but I did get it because I collect all of Star Trek, so I planned to get around to it eventually. I've heard it's good, and I know there's, like, issues maybe with season 2? Did they finish it? Did they end up selling it to Netflix? I know there were discussions about getting Netflix to do it. I'm not sure. You didn't miss much, Italian Shakespeare. Not too much.
corporation case number R period tilde 385 tilde 460 tilde 312 :U period S period.
This is the secret language that the other guy, the previous gentleman, David-Wynn, whatever it was, he claimed to have discovered it, and this was his protege who was continuing this on.
Because the United States and United States of America cease to exist in their capacity as a corporate entity, ending in the year 1999, coming out of a third and final international moratorium of bankruptcy of 70 years.
The bankruptcy thing, I've mentioned before that different sovereign citizens believe different dates for the bankruptcy of the United States that justifies their belief that it's like a private corporation entity thing. It's not really justified, but this is how they justify it, and that is, they believe 1999. Some believe when the Fed was, first created, when the Federal Reserve, and others believe when the 13th and 14th Amendments were created, I believe. So these people say it's all of them and they were 3 separate bankruptcies. Polly has his cracker with 25 months, says, hello all, so glad to see a live stream. Hannah, love to see how happy you are. Thank you. Lance says, I feel like he's trying to echo the Oval Office in his set dressing. Oh yeah, for sure. Again, he thinks he's like a leader of the world, or at least is trying to claim he has the legal sovereignty that would come with such a title. Nearest Crow Hill with 31 months says, Hannah, 3 things to say. 1, you're awesome. 2, I brought The Princess Bride from the Criterion Collection, my fiance's favorite movie, bought. That is a good set, or rather good. I like that it looks like a storybook cover. I have that one too. And 3, this postmaster thing being the secret rulers behind everything is literally a plot point in Ravenica, Magic the Gathering. Oh, that's nice. Maybe they got it from this, because David Wynn Miller was out here doing this conspiracy theory when he was still alive for decades. Like, he was doing this in, like, the 90s, the 80s, I think. So they may have gotten it from that. Mandrake Poe, with 100 bits, says, haven't caught a live one for a while. Bits for the Bits God. Well, thank you very much. And we are on a hype train, 87% to level 1.
Stemming from October 29th, 1929, ending in 1999. I have managed to maintain the rules of the continuance of the evidence as legislator, chief-judge, and executioner, as well as commander-in-chief.
The executioner one concerns me a bit. Anyone who considers themselves an executioner is probably not great if they're not literally actually that.
In the martial-law. And I'm maintaining the rules of the continuance of evidence through the journey of my life, as well as the forensics of where I have been, where I have filed, and who I am. Today is a sad and a very joyous day. Today is the opening of the
Grifter, True Believer? Ooh, good question. I'll have to see more. I haven't seen a ton of him. Ask me at the end of the stream. Right now, let's see what we can even... I'll do some sort of percentage, and we'll see throughout the stream if my feelings change, because I've not seen a bunch of his stuff. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do this stream today, was to kind of, like, get more introduced to his particular brand of things, because, as it turns out, he's still putting out videos regularly. Right now, I would say I'm 70% True Believer, 30% Grifter. Again, just a vibe. We'll feel it out throughout the stream. What else? Cloud Wizard with 100 bits says, an auditor video for a different stream. The auditor is actually right. Starts at 33 minutes for the cop depositions. Interesting. Thank you, Cloud Wizard. Skifazoa says, when you control the mail, you control information.
So I'm asking you nicely.
Let me save this real quick. Saved. That'll be good. Nice balance. Because I so often show, like, the shitty people. We should do streams where I show the cops being shitty.
Quantum banking system. The quantum banking system is the safety net that I've set up for planet Earth, as well as the citizens in the form...
Okay, I'm starting to... the percentage for Grift is raising as he talks about his quantum banking system. Buzzwords, buzzwords. Peeplord with 69 bits. Nice. Gets us over level 1. What a way to get over level 1 with a 69. Peeplord says, actually, Sputtering Metal on Plastic won a Nobel Prize, I think. Its use, maybe? it is used. There was supposed to be an apostrophe. Threw me off. It's used to protect electronics in transit in ESD safe bags. Also, the same tech makes things like touchscreens. Bits for train, hyperfocus. Thank you. That's interesting.
Former United States and the United States of America. The safety net deals with quantum grammar and the backstop by hard commodities such as gold, platinum, palladium, silver, rhodium, and other precious metals, as well
Rhodium gets a shout out. You don't hear rhodium enough. We get so much precious metal stuff from the sovereign citizens. Finally, rhodium gets their chance in the spotlight.
Metals that are
always the bride's mineral, never the bride.
On file and posit within the quantum banking system. Due to the course of many people's choices on a global level,
it's vague.
I am stopping and correcting in compliance with Title 42, 1986, knowledge of the contract. On October 4th, 2004, I became Chief Judge at the U.S. Supreme Court. I have maintained the rules of the...
Rhodium's pronouns are it. Altered Undying says, listening to you and drawing happy little trees, this D&D city is in a forest. So many trees. Ooh. Love a forest.
Continuance of evidence through many years, many trials and tribulations that the federal government has placed me through, and they know exactly who I am and what I've done. My last filing as Chief Judge at the U.S. Supreme Court was on January 14th, 2021.
Ooh, you made a filing. Good for you. Anyone can file anything. You just gotta pay the fee.
Because of the state that the quantum banking system has found itself in, with being flush in gold, flush in different assets that is liquidable for the benefit of mankind, it is very difficult to open that up for people in society for day-to-day use at this time, due to the condition that the world is in right now. So at this time, I'm going to have a special martial law hearing that I'll be posting with Mark-Daniel Seeger and his voyage in registering a global corporation called Seekers as a bounty corporation posited at the Secretary of the Navy's office on April 21st, 2000.
Something I find interesting, if you haven't seen me cover the other quantum grammar stream, I do want to point out a big difference in the presentation. Quantum grammar, David. So when we looked at David's thing, which was the 9-hour seminar he gave, he has a used car salesman kind of pitch going on. Let's give a listen for a second. 2% to level 2 on the hype train with a minute left.
The car in this space is...
I'll turn him up more once we go back to that video.
...with the fee of the $500. That's a performance contract. Everyone understands performance contracts. Now I have the Pizza Hut next to the Outback Steakhouse. Very popular places on Saturday night and Friday night. And the people came to my seminar from Pizza Hut. They said, you know, we've got 2 spaces reserved for delivery. And everybody parks in there, and my delivery guy's got no place to park. I says, well, put a sign up. For the parking of the car is with the crushing and melting. The sign next to it says, for the parking of the cars with the fee of the $500. No one ever parked in those 2 parking spaces again.
The thing that he has that I think his protege does not is that he talks like what he's saying is very smart, even though it is not. He is talking like everything he is saying is very true. He's confident. He sells it. He knows the speech patterns of a joke, of a story. Even when a story isn't funny, he can make people laugh because he knows the signifiers of when people are supposed to laugh at a joke. If you telegraph it enough, people will. People will fucking laugh. It's incredible. Anyway, so he's like an old school scammer. When I talked about him in that stream, I talked about it sort of similar to like he's this last in a weird line of like town-to-town grifters that just went from place to place. Couldn't exist these days because of the internet and mass communication and stuff. But we get here, and his protege just lacks that. And what's interesting is on the internet, these days, you don't even need that charisma. The audience is so broad, you're not going from town to town looking for like the most gullible 10% of that town. You need to find the most gullible 0.0000001% of the entire global audience of people on the internet. So the bar for finding people to get into a grift is lower. You can be less charismatic and scam people on the internet because the audience is bigger. So sure, more people will see it, and a ton of them, the vast majority, will be like, you're out of your mind. What are you talking about? What a weirdo on the internet. All you need is that 0.00001% that's like, yeah, I buy this. The internet's a weird place. Hydrate. Can do.
2003. R period, tilde 385, tilde 460, tilde 312, colon U period, S period. Martial law hyphen hearing with the publication of a global hyphen bounty corporation that is in file with the Secretary of the Navy's office through a postmaster claimant.
He's claiming that he's enacting martial law in the United States.
Claimant, Mark hyphen Daniel colon Seeger. How are you doing today, Mark?
Doing good, man. Doing really good.
Mark, on 4/21/2003, you filed your bounty corporation, which is you were a bounty hunter, catching people that were skipping bail for bail bonds and stuff across the United States, registered in all 50 states.
Yes, sir.
And
that in other countries.
That in other countries. You're registered as an international bounty corporation to chase people, and you've chased people in other countries.
Is there such a thing as an international bounty hunter? Unironically, I'm asking, is that a thing? Because that's a scary person. DM Trey says, speaking of D&D, I finally launched a scheme I've had for a long time. The vampire lord that my party has been dealing with cornered one of the party's biggest allies and charmed someone into inviting them to the fortress. This, there where people planted all over the fortress with bags of holding filled with vampire spawns that are now swarming. Think World War Z, but they have spider climb.
That not true?
Islands. Went to other islands.
No, Interpol's like the police, though. He's claiming he's an international bounty hunter.
Yep.
You went to other islands and chased them in islands.
Not legally? Oh, so he's just like doing trafficking then. Very cool.
It's okay.
Yep.
Okay, out of the continental United States.
Yes.
Okay, so your bounty corporation is on file with the Secretary of the Navy's office through corporation number R period 540-479-963 US.
Yes.
And it was on
correct.
And it was on file by you on 4/21/2003.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Mark, the Bounty Corporation has authorization to carry armament, carry tools for people to chase people in case you need to secure somebody and hold somebody down.
That would depend upon the laws of the area you're in. I'm assuming if you're talking internationally, then I would imagine you're bound to the laws of that country and locality about firearms or knives or handcuffs or other weapons that you might have.
Down, as well as simultaneously firearms to safeguard you, and that's registered through your bounty corporation?
Yes.
Okay.
Is he going to other countries and carrying around illegal firearms?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, Mark, thank you. You have been very helpful in this publication on this hearing. I needed to clarify some things for the court position, for the martial law, and for the stabilization force. That we do have a bounty corporation on play for the martial law registered through the Secretary of the Navy's office, which authorizes bounty hunters to join the corporation to safeguard the claim of the life citizens.
So are you trying to claim that you have deputized this quote-unquote international bounty hunter to enforce your decree of martial law? because neither of you have the authority to do any of those things, and I'm very concerned that you feel that you've just empowered, again, a self-described international bounty hunter with the ability to enforce quote-unquote martial law enacted by your postal service. That sentence, that all made sense. That made sense to me. Chiba Hawk says, I just joined, but this already feels like a Marcel bounty hunter scheme. Am I far off? It does. The vibe is there. That's the area that we're trending in.
For bounty. If bounty
Nice.
if bounty
Yes.
was if bounty was to be posted.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. There'll be no further questions and statements on this matter.
Appreciate it.
With the forensics of today opening up the quantum banking system and opening
What does he mean, quantum banking system? Aaliyah says these guys all sound like they never grew out of having a secret kids club with all the attendant fantasies. You know what's funny? I was thinking about this the other day. When I was in school, Jeremiah Moray, thank you for subscribing on YouTube. When I was a kid, when I was in elementary school with some of the little, schoolyard friends I had, we'd pretend to be a club that got together and investigated the supernatural. Because as a kid, I was very into, like, the concept of the supernatural, ghosts, and X-File type stuff. I wouldn't have said it that way as a kid, because I wasn't familiar with the X-Files until I was older. But, like, that kind of stuff, cryptids and things like that. Which might surprise you. Does that surprise anyone? Probably not. A lot of people who are into conspiracies as adults, like I am, as in a not believing them but interested way, probably liked that stuff as a kid. Anyway, I find it a little ironic that as an adult, I still kind of have a club of people I hang out with every day and talk about this stuff, except instead of trying to hunt ghosts, we're explaining why ghosts aren't real, and why this isn't real. This is sort of a ghost, if a ghost was someone's bad ideas about how international governance works.
it up for the public for the first time use on planet Earth. I am now going to give closure on the quantum banking system. The quantum banking system was established by me in 2001 when I disqualified the grammar charter for the Universal Postal Union. I found the grammar charter for the Universal Postal Union for all shipping authorizations of banking on planet Earth to be done using adjective pronouns and adverb verbs, which came in violation of Title 18, 1001, 1002 for fictitious grammar. Because I have stopped and corrected.
I'm gonna be honest, even as a grift, it's kind of impressive because as a grift, they basically invented a conlang, and that's pretty good. Like, imagine if you had basically invented Klingonese, but it was for a stupid grift. That's what they've done here, is they've invented a fake language with actual rules. To sell people a scam. What a shame.
In compliance with Title 42, 1986, knowledge of the contract. The Universal Postal Union's ability to collect mail, correspond with anyone, ceased to exist in 2001.
I've still been getting my mail, though. I get mail.
They met with me in Bern, Switzerland, at the Postal Union to have closure on a face-to-face meeting on June 16th, 2003, where it was established in a foundation for the global...
But that's illegal mail. I was an illegal mail, too. It's alright, though. Now I'm in compliance. MH Dark Beast says, Hannah, have you seen what is basically Starship Troopers the game? Super Earth bugs that decompose into fossil fuels, socialist robots whose CPUs are used for rigged voting machines for the AI that chooses the people in charge. Jesus Christ. Let me pause these. Helldivers. What kind of game is this?
The socialist automatons terror.
Didn't they do a bad Starship
The
Troopers
Federation
the
of
other day?
Super Earth, keeping managed democracy safe with the lives of our heroes, protecting
Managed democracy is very funny.
freedom from tyranny. with the gentle touch
Oh, Destiny style? I don't like Destiny.
of an iron fist. But liberty's enemies march ever closer. Together, we must take back control of freedom.
Together for managed democracy.
Together for victory.
Together for liberty.
Together for liberty.
Together, they fight for freedom.
At this point, I'm just concerned about satire like this, even satire that's, like, really on the nose, because people don't have media literacy. I'm just concerned. The discourse about Starship Troopers recently was just morale is at an all-time low.
Will you?
Peoplord says, that's me, I'm the guy, I made the language, me, Gus, they call me Conlangus. You fuck.
Enlist in the galaxy's elite fighting force.
Like, the problem with satire that just openly shows fascism being fascism is that its impact and the dissonance of the comedy is entirely dependent upon your internal understanding that fascism is bad. Like, if in the thing you aren't directly showing this is bad and saying over and over this is bad and it leads to people dying and everyone dies and it's terrible, people don't get it if they don't already know what they're watching. It's a joke that only makes sense if you already get the punchline. If you are fascist adjacent or just not thinking about things and don't know, you don't get the satire. You're just like, I like this. It's not good.
Work together to protect your future.
And to be clear, I'm not saying that kind of satire is wrong or bad. I love that kind of satire. What I'm saying is, be aware of your audience. That's why it's gore to the extreme. Again, your understanding of that implies that you know that that's a joke. You know that that's like a juxtaposition thing. You know that that's the point, but there are people who just think, oh, gore, fuck yeah, and they just think it's awesome. Like, that's a thing. Again, I'm not saying Starship Troopers is bad. I love Starship Troopers. It's one of my favorite fucking movies. Like, it's a top 2 Verhoeven for me. Number 1 for me is RoboCop, but I do love Starship Troopers. I just want people to be aware of what they're communicating to groups when they make art. I'm just saying, be aware that you could make the most on-the-nose satire of the shittiest thing possible, and there are always going to be people who look at it and go, that thing's awesome, because they just like that thing unironically and don't get that it's satire because the satire exists in that thing just being the thing. So if you're already someone who likes thing, you're not going to see the satire, you're just going to see the thing.
Dispense peace with the ultimate weaponry. Become a legend. Join the Helldivers, the galaxy.
We really need to do better teaching media literacy to people. I'm sure that game's fun, by the way. Nothing against the game at all. It seems fun, and I love that kind of fucking satire. My lament is just a concern of the audience, not the product. The audience concerns me. But then when I say that, I feel like a pretentious asshole. Like, I feel like whenever I say stuff like that, like, I'm the asshole that's like, everyone's stupid. No, they're not! I'm just genuinely, I see a trend of bad media literacy. I'm sure I miss things too, but like, damn. Profane Priestess says, to quote Thought Slime, it's hard to make media about fucked up guys because no matter how fucked up you make your guy, someone will think he's cool. Yeah.
Postal Union and the forensics that have the forensics of quantum banking to be established as a fact in the world of fiction. And the Universal Postal Union's ability
I guess what I'm trying to express is, like, when you or I are watching Starship Troopers, to dive into this discourse a little bit, you or I, when we're watching it, will see, oh my goodness, this society is awful, it is militaristic, it's being shown as if it is Beverly Hills 90210 with all these young, like, model actors and actresses, and everything's clean and beautiful and crime is low, but it's juxtaposed with that harsh governmental structure where you have to be in the military to even get an opportunity to vote. That juxtaposition exists in the movie in a material sense, but the fact that you see those things as bad is coming from you. It's coming from me. You or I see Starship Troopers and pick up on the satire because we see the fascist government and think, fascist governments are bad, and it's treating it as if it is good, and that is funny. But the movie plays it relatively straight. I know there are really obvious on-the-nose bits, but again, be aware that there are a lot of people who do not have media literacy, or it's very, very bad. So for them, they don't see that dissonance. They just think, yeah, people should have to earn a right to vote. That should be a thing. If you think that way, there's no juxtaposition. It's just a movie about a bunch of people in a system you like doing cool stuff. Like, the dissonance in that satire is a dialogue between the audience and the content. You understand the juxtaposition of the tone and the content because you know they don't mesh, because you know fascism is bad. If you don't know fascism is bad, then there's no juxtaposition. It's just a fun, cheesy bug shoot movie. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to get across.
Communicate ended in 2001. You will see a stamp, a $1 stamp, with the continuance of the evidence of many corporation claim numbers for the quantum banking system.
Another example, I talked about this a while ago. I saw American History X for the first time last year. And watching American History X from start to finish, I thought to myself, that's a good movie, but my problem with it is, I think it's a good movie because I already understand that racism is bad. Like, if you had watched American History X from start to finish, including the ending, and you are a racist, if you were a white nationalist, what you get out of that movie would be very different than what I get out of that movie. John Doyle watching American History X or Nick Fuentes watching American History X can pull the opposite message out of it than I do.
System. These claim numbers.
Framing matters. And if the whole joke is that your framing is showing something bad positively, it only works if you already know the bad thing is bad. Otherwise, you're just showing a bad thing positively to someone who doesn't know it's bad, so it looks good to them. Does that make sense? Again, I'm not trying to, like, tell people what to do. It's just, it's a genuine concern when you're writing or constructing a narrative or media, how you are depicting things. What are you doing? What are you communicating to the audience? Who's your audience? Why are you doing it, you know? Just keep in mind, what is the text and subtext saying, and what is supposed to be a communication between the audience and the medium, and in what way does it serve that? Anyway.
Are filed in a variety of places. Places such as the finding of fraudulent grammar at the International Bureau of Weights and Measures, which is a location that governments around the world register their means.
Oh, I love the Vile Eye. If people haven't seen the Vile Eye is a YouTube channel that covers, like, does breakdowns of villain characters, of evil characters, and about their evil, modalities of evil, just interesting textual analysis about different fictional characters. Would highly recommend.
Create sums and differences, such as communication, the country's ability to navigate mathematical functions, as well as to measure sums and differences of land boundaries, as well as the disqualification through fictitious grammar of all stock markets on planet Earth, which I am the copyright controller of,
He owns the copyright to stock markets? That's not a thing you can own copyrights to.
5 sealed letters.
It's also not what a copyright means, because the stock market isn't a written or any sort of, like, media? It's just a thing.
Of the credit from 5 different stock markets around the world. Each stock market around the world in 2005 was presented with the quantum stock market, as well as the quantum-crypto-currencies, which I am the copyright owner of, in 2003. On the first page, you will also see the Title IV 1-to-1.9 dimension flag, but it has a spire on the top because of the condition of state of martial-law.
Oh good, he's showing us the spire. I was worried we wouldn't see it.
The martial-law keeps the quantum banking system safe because the quantum banking system is a position of neutrality as well as functions for a safety net for the people of the world. However, because of the condition of the state of the world right now, the quantum banking system sits in a condition of state of the martial-law, which I am the commander-in-chief of. Get your bounty at the trial that we will hold for the martial law trials against these vessels who are creating mass-genocide.
Oh no, wait, he has a list.
With at fortheclaimofthelife.com.
Is this like a hit list?
Upon getting the claim of the life, you at that point.
Oh no, he's got a list of people he thinks he's gonna do martial law at.
Genocide-performers, and their pictures are on this vessel contract. And please take note that as this contract thrives, and as bounty seekers capture these performers that have created this mass genocide and bring them to my court, the martial law court.
His martial law court. So he would like people to bring him George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Anthony Fauci, Joe Biden, oh god, George Soros, Bill Clinton, Melinda Gates, Klaus Schwab, Robert Edward Turner, and Justin Trudeau. I think that's a heavy order. Sir, you're asking for people to bring you multiple former and current presidents of the United States, some of the richest people on Earth, as well? I don't think that's probably a good thing to do on the internet or anywhere.
At that point, I will then open up more vessels to go after that have created.
Oh, there's a page 2. Of course there's a page 2. Did I think there was only one page of people on his list? Mandrake says, if I had $1 for every time this guy said hyphen, I would need quantum banking, or I wouldn't need quantum banking.
Havoc and harm towards the citizens of planet Earth, have engaged in human trafficking, have engaged in genocide war efforts, and tricked the people of the world through this fraudulent grammar birth certificate system that they have perpetrated.
What did I think of the trailer for the Borderlands film? It's probably going to be bad, but I'll have fun watching it. I'll probably have fun watching it at some point on streaming or something.
The lies and lockdowns on.
I didn't have high expectations anyway. Like, I like the Borderlands games, but like, when I heard they were making a movie, I was never under an impression that you can really translate that. Because it's already pretty cringe, right? To me, Borderlands has kind of got the tone of like a role-playing game you might play with some friends. Like, it's not too serious. It's got kind of like a loose narrative and like seriousness about the tone. It's just whatever, you know? I don't know if that works for a movie. It works for a looter shooter where it's just like fun and you're hanging out with people online or just playing by yourself and listening to a podcast. I don't know if it works for a movie, but I'll give it a shot.
Paragraph 5 deals with a different style of bounty seeker. The style of bounty seeker that it deals with is someone that I may or may have not court-martialed in the past. So if you were an active member in the Pentagon and you found yourself in one of the 5,000 musters and Vasilis that were sued under AWOL charges and you didn't show up to trial at the Washington Mall, which was published at all military branches every 45 days for about 3 years. And so there's a massive amount of footage on the trial itself because the Pentagon had 20 video cameras on me at the trial location at all times, as well as Chinook and Apache helicopters above my heads with cameras out filming the trials. If you were sued as a vessel at those trials and you want to stop and correct, You have the right to stop and correct and join the quantum banking system.
Oh, that's funny. He's basically saying, people I'm randomly suing who work at the Pentagon, you can join me and I'll make this stop. Whatever this is in this context, I guess. His court-martials to his fake court?
In doing so, there will be a pardon checklist that will come into play for amnesty for those that have engaged with me in the court-martialing and have knowledge of it.
He's trying to recruit. He's like, I need to bring people in to help me go get the other people I've court-martialed. That's an interesting offer, sir.
But made a choice at the time not to commit and not to join with it for whatever reason. So this paragraph 5 deals with you if you want to come forward and get a pardon from me from the court-martialing that happened back in 2004 through 2008 specifically.
It kind of feels like if it's been since 2004 since you court-martialed someone and nothing has happened, they're probably good. I don't think your court-martial means shit, if I'm being honest. That kind of tells me that it's bullshit, doesn't it? Because if I got a court-martial from, like, I don't know, wherever you get one of those from officially, I'd go. I wouldn't wait 20 years.
Specifically at the Washington Mall in Washington, D.C.
Oh god, 2004 was 20 years ago.
You can then come.
That makes me feel disgusting. The never-ceasing hand of seconds of time is just ticking and ticking, one piece of sand at a time, and we all slip into memory, and then even that turns to dust. It's all for naught. Except for the cheese. Except for the cheese.
Come forward and we can go have a face-to-face meeting and solve and bring solutions for you helping the global
Thoughts on the Silent Hill 2 film? I've not seen the Silent Hill movies.
bounty seekers achieve this mass global roundup. As a further note, above paragraph 5 talks about the global mercenaries with cosmic crown :1, cosmic crown :2, and cosmic crown.
You intend to live forever. Me too.
:3. For those of you in the Central Notelligence Agency that I have sat down with specifically
Notelligence?
in
Burn?
my labs in 2007, 2008 in Mapleton, Utah, you know specifically on what the Papal Bulls commanded of the mercenaries to perform the compliance of the correct communication, parsing, syntax, grammar, and comply with the quantum banking system as it changes the structure and brings accountability to planet Earth. So on a side note, please go back and read your Papal Bulls, which were on file at the Secretary of the State's office at the Vatican in 2007, 2008, as well as the Vatican.
He's filing legal documents at the Vatican? Okay, I'm moving on to another video. Holy shit. Sorry, I know he's very dense in his verbiage. It's, certainly something. Let's do a back and forth. Let's do something that's a little more conversational. Maybe it'll slow him down a little. Here's an interview he did recently, a couple weeks ago, from another channel.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Today, I want to explore a bit more about some of the corporate lies, particularly in the Admiralty and Maritime law.
I do find it interesting. I've brought it up before. Conspiracies often have a grain of truth, so people will be like, I distrust government or the financial systems, or I recognize that life is not fair and there are inequities, inequalities, injustice. These things are true, but then they'll take that and they'll go, and it's all caused by this very specific singular unigroup that all works together towards one thing. No. Please start looking at systemic issues with systemic solutions, because that's usually what it is. It's usually a lot of people in organizations acting independently in their own best interest, and people fall through the gaps. The system hurts people. The system is not great, but that does not mean that there is an evil, secret cabal somewhere that's plotting that. It means that our systems have problems, were designed imperfectly, or sometimes with inequities built in, and we need to work on that. Okay.
You know that on this channel we've been exploring legal and lawful and things like that, big deceptions, those sort of things. Well, an opportunity to talk to a gentleman who has been exploring this sort of area for something like 30 years has come to me. The name has been given to me a few times, and I wasn't quite sure who he was, with quite big claims attached. And yet I've just spoken to him and he seems an incredibly humble and likable gentleman. His name is Russell-J. Gould. He is the quantum, and I'm going to get this right, quantum grammar co-creator and postmaster general of the world. Apparently he's captured the American flag and he joins me now. Russell.
The American flag? Is that how he thinks it interesting? Does he think world works like capture the flag? Like he found the American flag, like it is a singular thing, and if he has the flag, he wins? He's the king of the world?
Can I call you?
He's the king of the castle, and we're all dirty rascals, etc., etc.
You, Russell?
Yes, it's an honor to be here, Richard.
I've watched your Last Man Standing documentary in which you explain a lot about what's happened to you over the last 30 years and some of the things that you...
Last Man Standing. Hold on.
Sell them from elementary school to elementary school.
This is his video where he actually goes over all his stuff, so we should definitely watch that and get his overview of his nonsense.
Came down.
My internet's being fucky. What's going on with YouTube? Anyway, back to that interview.
Have been doing. You've been on an amazing roller...
Oh no, he's captured the flag. Get him before he returns to his base.
...roller coaster, and you've achieved some wonderful things. And yet, on the one hand, I was kind of expecting...
By the way, if you're on YouTube, do me a favor and like the stream. Only takes a sec. Thank you.
Somebody all quite sort
Appreciate
of,
it.
you know, stiff, pompous and all of that. And here you are, a lovely man who I'm very thrilled to be talking to from the heart.
Why are they speaking the words colon and hyphen? So Russell J. Gould is the student and protege of David Wynne Miller. I'm probably putting those in the wrong places, but you get it. Who basically invented a conlang, a constructed language, and then claimed that it was the true legal language and only contracts written in this language he invented are official. And this guy, after David died, took over, and he's like the head of this movement, conspiracy, grift, take your pick of titles, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it. So yes, they think that their names are only really their names if they have those hyphens and stuff inserted. I say conlang. It's basically English, but with very strange grammatical rules for, like, punctuation, and stuff like that. So it still uses English words, it's just more so the structure that's actually really weird. So it's more something like Pig Latin. A little more complicated than that, but it's like, you know, it's a secret code. Heard Gus invented the conlang. Fuck.
Sure. Yeah, so, you know, accountability in the quantum system that has been created for the world is about self-governance. And it comes from within. And the neutrality and the kindness that we share to our fellow mankind. It's a different storyline than the division and the hatred and the corporate lies that have slipped into our lives. So I hope that the world sees
to be clear, when he says corporate, he means not just like actual corporations, but he means governments as well. Again, to sovereign citizens like this, the governments of the world are also corporations. They don't think that there is any sort of categorical differentiation between the American government and Apple or, you know, Nintendo. Name a company. Name any company. You know what I mean? They're all private mega corporations as far as they are concerned. And the official American government doesn't exist, which is one of the reasons that he believes that he can claim to be the leader of a postal union, because he thinks secretly the post office is in charge of everything, including the private American corporation that he thinks is running the day-to-day lives of people in the United States. Sorry, deciphering the conspiracy stuff can be kind of... your brain buffers from time to time.
Take it serious on the grammar and how to be accountable with that and to learn how to govern themselves. And, you know, there's nothing really out there except for what you deal with yourself, and to learn how to be content with this, with the space in
So what if your body is going to regret the Kraft mac and cheese you wanted that beautiful neon orange? That's a good choice. Honestly, Kraft mac and cheese is a base. First of all, nostalgic food choices, there's nothing wrong with that. Hot Pockets, for instance. Occasionally I'll eat a Hot Pocket, and Hot Pockets, as much as I've memed about them in the past, are disgusting. It's the lowest quality cuts of meat. Like, even for pepperoni, it is somehow really low quality. But you eat it sometimes because it's nostalgic. You had it as a kid. Like a Lunchable or something like that. Nothing wrong with that. Standard Kraft mac and cheese, perfectly fine. Cut up some hot dogs in there. Put some ketchup. Eat like a 3-year-old. Sometimes it's good for the soul, you know? Is this an offshoot of Sovereign Citizens? That's a good question. I wouldn't say it's an offshoot. It's almost like it's a antecessor, a predecessor, rather. What you said would be an antecessor, a predecessor. It is a source from which a lot of the sovereign citizen mythology comes from. This is a larger, broader conspiracy that a lot of the mythology and rules of sovereign citizenry have dripped down from. Some of it has also come from posse comitatus, the stuff about sheriffs being the supreme law enforcement in an area is posse comitatus, but the conspiracies about the post office being in charge of things, that stuff comes from Gould here, as well as his deceased partner. What's the word I'm thinking of? Opposite of, like, someone who takes over after you, not an heir. The opposite of that. Anyway, his predecessor invented this stuff and was peddling it around in the 80s and 90s at different cities and towns. He'd, tell people, oh, it was one of those conspiracies that kind of spread on early internet or through him having meetings at conference rooms. Think Bob Larson in like a hotel room conference thing. He would do that. Mentor, thank you. I'm doing really bad with words today. I've been so anxious, and it's been fucking with my ability to present. And I apologize. I'm really doing my best. Thank you for everyone giving me some, patience lately.
In your heart and your mind, and to not be influenced by the outside world, which is a very difficult thing to do these days.
Well, absolutely. With so much going on and so much news coming down the channels, although I try not to watch all the fake lies on mainstream media, to be honest with you. Now, a lot of this comes, I mean, as I say on my channel, here we are in Britain, it's turned into corporate Britain. Everything is about trying to extract money from you. It's taking your energy away.
It's so interesting, again, the recognition that private interest of wealthy is superseding the interests of the average person. Fair observation, but instead of recognizing that an answer to that might be better regulations, tighter regulations, which would require a governmental entity, instead he lumps the government in with those corporate entities and then starts to act as though the only answer is this quantum grammar stuff. Again, it almost feels like sometimes conspiracy theories are a way to avoid actual solutions, because actual solutions are hard. So let's make up a mythology where it's just easier to pretend we're right and we win. Self-delusion is a shorter distance to travel than a lot of hard work.
And we getting tied up in the courts with very strange things. And you realize that this all comes down, and this is quite incredible, I think, when you look at it, the simplicity, really, of grammar. Who would have thought that so much could be tied up with the way you write things?
Oh, we're presupposing he's right here. Hard-hitting interview.
On paper.
I really want to bring some of these people on. I was thinking about some of my favorite stuff I've done on the channel, and the Peter interview is up there. I want to start bringing on some conspiracy people and talking to them in a respectful way. I don't agree with what they believe in, but I'm not going to bring them on to mock them. This is not about debate broing. I just want to get a better understanding of their worldview and why they believe what they believe.
Yeah.
Some of them, for instance, I would pre-record. Like, I was thinking about inviting Marcel on sometime. That I would have to pre-record because he's volatile and I don't want to do that live. Or if I'm afraid someone might be on kind of the margins of, like, is this exploitative? I might do an interview and then see how it goes and then determine if it's something just for my personal use in terms of how I understand conspiracy theories and how they work, or if it's something that's good to illustrate to people. My point is, I don't want to be exploitative or harm people. I find this topic incredibly interesting, but I always want to temper that with, we are not here to make lol cows of people. It's okay to have a good time and find odd things interesting, even humorous, but never lose sight of the fact that these are human beings, some of whom have mental illness, and even those that don't have something going on where they have delusional beliefs, even if it is not clinical in nature.
Yes.
I also apologize if those addendums get annoying. I know I do it a lot, but it's important to me that I bring that up. I want to make sure I have an audience that knows why we're here. It's okay to have fun. I tell jokes. The beliefs are strange. They're still human beings. That's the important thing.
You know, the corporate lies have been going on for quite some time. They've started with, our kings, our feudalistic systems of
Toreador, 3-stream streak, very nice.
czars and empires and dynasties, and how that.
I know you're not. It's so funny, Toreador. Whenever you're here, I know you're not. I have a friend with the name Tori, like a really good friend of mine, and I always, whenever I read your message, in my head, it's like I'm thinking I'm talking to her. I know you're not. I gotta message her. It's been so long since I've seen her.
Capture of this feudalistic system would capture lands and capture people, and then put their concepts into their theater.
Even Bob Larson. Bob Larson would be interesting. Bob Larson would be interesting. It would be a case-by-case basis. If it was someone like Bob Larson that I had inklings was maybe less of a true believer and more using certain things, I would ease into bringing that up. It's not what you lead with in an interview, because you don't want to scare them off. You don't want them to get defensive immediately, so you sort of start with easy things and agreeing with them. Sorry, not to give it away, but there is a thought process to how you're interviewing people. Historically, I haven't always done that, and I think it served me badly. Like, even when I talked to Marantz a while ago, I got so snarky. I get into this, like, default of, like, I want to be snarky and tell jokes. Because, like, historically, that's been my job. It's been less important, you know, what I have to say that's trying to talk about a topic seriously, and more been, I need to own this person, I need to get a point on the internet, because that was just how I viewed my job, you know? That's how a lot of the internet is. It's very sensationalized, let's say. So I don't know. I wasn't happy with that Marantz talk. I do want to talk to him again at some point, and I know he was on a while back and asked, so I hope we will, but I don't want to do the debate bro thing. I really don't. I want to have discussions, even with people I disagree with, and be fair about it and point out when I think they're wrong, but I'd rather learn and listen than just be a dick who just always thinks they're right. Even if I do think I'm right, it's more important that I'm learning about what someone else thinks and why. I don't know. I just know I started this job a long time ago. Over a decade now, like 12 years. And just from my, you know, teens to my 30s now almost. Next month I'm turning 30. I've just had a lot of change on how I view things and what I'm interested in.
Such as taxes and tenants, and really set up this snowball of
Stromboli. Are you telling me that you are not a Stromboli? Because that's unfortunate.
Control. And the people of the world, you know, because they used a concept of feudalism, which means might made right. It didn't have a concept of.
That's a very glib and not helpful definition of feudalism. That's not what feudalism is. It might be part of feudalism, certainly conflict and stuff, but, like, that's not even unique to feudalism. Might makes right is not unique to the feudalist system of social, like, arrangement. What are you talking about?
Fairness or closure. And then when you look at closure, you look at having full closure of words, because these words have meanings. And so what I created was placing the words in a now space condition. And I was working with an ex-business partner of mine who died in 2008.
It's interesting that it seems like he's trying to claim that he invented this primarily when it used to be David, his mentor, who said he invented all of this. So now that David is dead and Stephen is in charge of this quantum grammar thing, now he's acting as though David was a side note and really he had mostly developed this. Interesting.
18, David Winkle.
A little Tommy Tallarico of him.
Miller, and he developed the prepositional phrases. And what I developed is the quantum of the now space, tying it all into the now space. And we formed a partnership way back in 1998. And so I was working with him.
Stromboli, I like calzones, so it's okay.
Since 1995. So it's
not as good as a Stromboli, though.
It was quite a journey to get to this.
His mother's very proud.
This space with him, and I made choices not to contract with the people that he was under contract with to be with. And he had a vision of his job was to educate the top 1% of the 1% of the world. And, and he succeeded in that.
He's saying that because David Wynn Miller claimed that he had relationships with a bunch of, Supreme Court justices and politicians and famous individuals. It was all lies. It was all lies. I'm comfortable saying that. He died. I don't think he's gonna sue me. And even if he was alive and did try to sue me, he's wrong. And he's a liar, so it doesn't matter. The truth is a defense to defamation. He used to claim that, he was a secret lawyer for Bill Clinton during the Monica Lewinsky scandal. He claimed he came up with the defense of, I don't consider oral sex to be sex.
That concept, but in that, he lost control.
Anyway, so he was a big liar who lied.
Control.
He claimed he died on the operating table and was dead for a crazy amount of time and then came back to life and his heart was hanging out but he was still alive, and that then he didn't have to sleep for decades. He was out there.
All of that which he was a part of in 2006. And so anything after that he was doing was just kind of nefarious to divide the people and confuse people. And
oh my goodness, is he trying to villainize his mentor?
We see a pretty good job of that.
Top 10 anime betrayals.
That worldwide, where people are using the quantum grammar technologies and they're not comprehending that quantum and quantum entanglements.
Entanglements? He's not even using the buzzwords correctly.
The now space you have to be careful what you say and what you do, because if you call yourself a coroner or something like that, then you're bringing in death. And the quantum system is about life and about being
noted. Don't call yourself a coroner.
Fruitful and being neutral and being peaceful. So which is opposite of the feudalistic system that was set up contrary to peace and neutrality, but more into might makes right in these maritime contracts, such as our birth certificates and all these usuries that we have entangled ourselves into.
Usury is the act of giving a loan with the intent of gaining money from the interest paid back, which he believes a birth certificate is. It's not. That's actually one of the places that it comes from. The conspiracy theorists, Sovsits, believe that their birth certificates are ownership deeds or a receipt. Comes from this guy and David Wynn Miller. I should say from David Wynn Miller. See? I'm doing it. He's trying to shift the narrative that he helped co-invent this, even though it was just David Wynn and he was his mentor, and now I'm buying it.
To participate with,
It's funny how you can get tricked verbally when someone's a con person and they're talking at you.
Go buy
even when you're trying to consciously do things, you slip.
Groceries, or go to school, or go to the doctor's office, or get utilities. All these things were in this shipping containment to control our navigation, where we could go, who said we could get through a certain place, like a port or an entry. And with the grammar,
again, this is the maritime law stuff. acting as though people are vessels in the water and ports.
It didn't mean to do, and what was done was when you disqualify.
What matters is that this is all a mythology that effectively exists to try and legitimize sovereign citizen and other ideologies that try to delegitimize the rule of law. That's basically it. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's a mythology that has been crafted in order to give people a story to believe that the rule of law does not exist for them. That's how you could describe a lot of conspiracy theories, actually, is less in what they actually believe, but why they believe it, because that's the important thing. Largely, conspiracy theories are maladaptive coping mechanisms. They exist for many reasons, but that is a big one. They exist as a result of something someone wants or needs, some psychological something that they feel is missing, and that conspiracy theory, the narrative, because that's what conspiracy theories are, they are narratives, they are stories that give them something. So I think that's a helpful way to describe conspiracy theories, is less what they actually believe, but what they believe and why they believe it. Because the why they believe it, I think, is probably the most important key to undoing it and preventing other people from falling into the same traps. The conspiracy theory is the symptom. There is an underlying cause.
Treaties and trusts on planet Earth with the grammar, because all the grammar was written in future tense and past tense, and you bring it into the now space. When the bad guys got that technology, they then can open it up to call.
You can usually follow soft set logic, but there's nothing here to latch onto. Believe it or not, there actually is. I understand the things he's saying. It's nonsense in the sense that what he's saying is not true, but, like, I could diagram this. I could diagram these sentences if I could visually show it to you and say, this is the buzzword, this is the important parts of the sentence, that he's actually trying to explain a concept that matches a vibe for conspiracy theorists. Like, I could do that, and I guess I'll try a little bit, but it's like, how do I put this? It's not super relevant. The construction of the mythology is interesting in and of itself, but it's less important than what he's trying to do, which again is to delegitimize the rule of law.
Everything borderless, use the grammar against the people. And I told David, I said,
when he's claiming use the grammar against the people, for instance, the broad conspiracy here is that they, a large consortium of elites, the face of which is the government and corporations and the post office, which again they think is in charge of the world, elites are using this quote-unquote, like, quantum banking system, or no, sorry, normal banking system. He believes in quantum banking. I'm talking too fast. I always talk as though you guys know what you don't know as much about conspiracy as me. Let me wheel it back a little bit and talk a little slower so I'm not micro-machining at you. Okay, so in this conspiracy, the primary concern is that they feel powerless. They feel a lack of agency within the world. A problem a lot of us feel because as the world has gotten smaller through the use of communication and technology, we see just how many people there are. We not only see micro problems in our day-to-day lives like we would historically, or local problems, we see regional, state, countrywide, national, large geographical areas, hemispheric, and global problems on a daily basis. It gives us a sense of the scale of our lives, and objectively that scale is small. We are tiny people, making very little effect broadly, and to some people that is disturbing. It is very scary and unnerving to a lot of people to recognize that you are sort of metaphorically a tiny little speck on a big ball full of other specks, and you can work as hard as you want and do incredible things, and it won't even make a dent in the overall trajectory of where humans and these other specks are going, you know what I mean? We have limited power and agency. People don't like that. So in order to fill that gap and explain it away, they need a villain. They create an idea of a cabal, of a governmental entity, of a group of elites that are all conspiring to do this to them. This is projection. And what I mean by that is not that they want to do this themselves, necessarily. I mean projection in the psychological sense where you are taking and observing an internal state, your anxiety about your lack of agency, but instead of recognizing that's just a personal thing that I need to deal with, because nothing I do is going to change the nature of society, you say, no, I'm not feeling this way because there's existential scary things in the world. It's being caused by a group of evil people. It simplifies things. It makes it black and white. You are a good person, and those anxieties would just go away if the bad people were stopped. That is a model, a narrative that is comforting to people. It's not true. The world is rarely ever that simple, but it comforts people. Within that comfort, though, does come questions. People end up having cognitive dissonance. People will recognize that, of course, because the thing they believe isn't true, that the things they observe in day-to-day life do not fit into that belief system. So to explain why these things don't match, the mythology of the conspiracy will become more and more elaborate. For instance, when they say, oh, well, if the rule of law doesn't apply to us and I feel like I don't have agency, they wouldn't say it like this. A lot of this is subconscious, and their motivations are opaque even to themselves, but they're more operating based on their feelings even if they don't realize it. We all do this, by the way. This is not exclusive to conspiracy theorists. We are all motivated emotionally, right? At least to some extent. So anyway, when reality comes up against this mythology, they need to create further, more elaborate mythology in order to cover that dissonance, because it's hard to live with. People don't like that. Again, the mythology gets out there and complicated to the point where it isolates you from other people because you're speaking a different language, if that makes sense. So when you listen to this, if you don't pay attention to conspiracies and sovereign citizens as much as me, it sounds like nonsense. And it is nonsense in the way that it is not true, but it is internally a somewhat logical system. It is a story that in of itself kind of makes sense to explain reality through the lens of their beliefs, through the lens of them feeling the need to explain the world away, why they feel so small and irrelevant. So it gets really complicated. It gets impenetrable to newcomers sometimes, and that's why rabbit holes that people get sucked down are important for conspiracy theories. You've heard about this, like, pipeline to conspiracy theories or the right wing, because once you get into these niche communities, the language, the narratives are so niche and part of that sub-community that it is completely ununderstandable to someone outside of it. So you need to start easing people in usually, and that's what you see with these like pipelines to get people into conspiracies, because it's a whole vocabulary and language and like set of new fictional rules you need to learn. You need to learn new in-group signifiers, new definitions of words. It's really interesting. So when you see a conspiracy that's like this out there, usually it started more simply and ended up spiraling out of control as the narrative had to grow to explain away evidence that it's not true, basically.
Says, very dangerous things happens when you give nefarious families and nefarious people technology, because they're going to use it for themselves and not give full closure to the general public about what's going on.
Felt dog whistly.
So
hard to tell, though.
It's very, and I had the conversation with him in 1999 about what happens when someone uses quantum grammar, and they tell lies. And his answer was, well, you'd start a war over it. I said, yeah.
See, that's interesting, because David Wynn Miller would directly claim the opposite. He would say quantum grammar was the key to peace because no one starts war over math problems, and he considered, or at least claimed to consider, his quantum grammar conlang to be math. It's not, but that's how he characterized it. Again, so I am doubting I'm just personally doing this based on what I have seen of David Wynn Miller and this guy. I think that this guy is lying about conversations he had with David Wynn Miller to bolster his claim to this quantum grammar community. He's like, no, you all like David, but he was actually maybe not fully aware of what he had wrought on the world. I'm here to protect you all. He's sort of the, Brigham Young. He's the Brigham Young to David Wynn's, Joseph Smith, if that makes sense. He's the Paul to Jesus. These comparisons make sense? He is the second large voice who is using the martyrdom or mythology of a now dead leader in order to bolster their claim to the throne, while also trying to claim the legitimacy of the dead person. Does that make sense? They're trying to draw a direct lineage between themselves and the dead person who was in charge of the movement, and also switch doctrine to their views while claiming the dead person was actually on their side the whole time. Interesting. Stakem, thanks for gifting a sub, and Hbeard says, no one starts a war over math problems. Robert McNamara and his body count-based model for Vietnam War might have something to say about that. Well, yeah, David Wynn was a con artist, so he lied a lot.
Yeah, but it's not about what I would do. It's about what we're...
Didn't Joseph Smith want his son to succeed him? He may have. I know there was like a power struggle. I don't remember the specifics. That happens a lot in religions, when it goes from kind of like a small group to the original leader dying. For instance, pretty sure that's how the Sunni Shiite split in Islam happened, was who was the heir to like the empire, the group of people who was going to lead after Muhammad died, because some wanted it to be more based on lineage and others wanted it to be like based on, I don't remember the specifics, but there was a discussion, and one of the groups was more wanted it to be someone related to Muhammad and others did not, and that started the divide. At least that's my understanding. I don't know a ton, so.
What are you
Am I Hannah the Horrible on YouTube? No, I'm Hannah Reloaded on YouTube.
doing about it?
Not familiar with Hannah the Horrible.
And he wouldn't answer the
Not a bad name, though.
question. So that was a tough thing. That was my first real eye-opener, because, you don't...
No problem. I'm glad you asked. I do have a command, by the way, if you ever want to know, for, like, Discord or YouTube or anything. You can do a YouTube command like this, and it'll give you a link to the YouTube channel.
really know somebody.
Thank you, people who hang out and actually apparently enjoy listening to me talk about how conspiracy theories work. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Until you're with them for quite a while.
Mr. Duck Sauce with a link. What is this from? I don't think I can play this. That's from a TV show for sure.
Sure.
And I was with David from 1995 to till he died in 2018, with a lot of real tough love and tough things that had happened during that time frame, because you have to do what you say in the now space.
I'm glad I have an audience for my hyperfixation. Let me put it like that. Anyone who gets hyperfixations like me, imagine you have an audience that comes and watch you investigate that hyperfixation all the time. It's very interesting. It's nice having company.
And so I didn't really know him, and I'm a very forgiving person. I give people a chance. I'm banking on mankind to do the correct thing, especially when no one's looking. It's very easy to put money and put control in front of the concept that you're to get yourself ahead in life. And I always made the choice that I can be content with where I'm at now, and so it's a much different approach than what David took. And we had a lot of corporate fights, and we had corporate shareholder meetings, and I mean, it's how corporations were set up. And when
all right, interview's interesting, but I want to see his documentary. Apparently, he did a whole documentary, quote unquote, about his belief system. So this is like his magnum opus. This is Russell J. Gould's like thesis on his beliefs. So this should be better for like intro people who know less. Let's find out. DM Trey says, I'm always worried I'm annoying people with my fixation. I worry about that too.
Central control.
Every stream I'm worried I'm just annoying you guys, and then I remember, oh yeah, if they're really annoyed, they can click away. Like, that's not on me. If you're watching a streamer you hate, like, that's not a me problem. Peoplord says, I bet a lot of your tinfoil clothes are made from fabrics only made possible by depositing small amounts of metal on plastics. Ooh. Well, that's cool.
I figured out that the post office was the central control to authorize the corporate structures.
Again, he is saying this like he made it up. It is so frustrating. I don't even care because it's fictional. It's like trying to take credit for nonsense. It's like trying to claim credit because you discovered what color shoes leprechauns wear. Like, it doesn't matter because it's not true. But it is frustrating that he's basically plagiarizing his dead mentor and claiming he invented it. It's annoying.
Of government in our day-to-day lives. When we would file for an LLC, we would file with the Secretary of State, whatever state we were in. However, what the state was not telling you is that they were taking the fees that you paid them, and then they were paying a usury fee to the post office for that entity to exist. However,
do you mean that they were paying the post office for service? Because that's not a usury fee.
We caught the post office in a bankruptcy condition where the post office lost its capacities because it ceased to exist. Those that are in
No, the post office is still a thing, sir.
Bankruptcy do not have any contract rights. As we were learning about the construct of contract, it came down to the foundation of the flag. Because the bearer and the owner of the flag also allows subcontractors, or what they would call federal contractors.
Okay, so really the foundation of this is he believes that a nation is like a game of capture the flag. If you get the flag, you win. That's not how this works, although that would explain some people's actions on January 6th. I shouldn't do that. I make a joke about that. People are always like, and even me, make fun of the January 6th thing, and I'm like, what were they expecting to happen? I should explain, there is a thing they were expecting to happen, in case you don't know. It's funny to be glib about it, but to be clear, there actually was an attempt. The reason that they were trying to, stop the certification of votes was because in the Constitution, there's sort of an unclear thing about this, what happens if they fail to do so. And they were hoping through the courts, if they had interrupted the certification of votes on January 6th, then on January 7th or 8th or something, then they could have the House, which was controlled by Republicans, vote for who the president was, and the electorate would have nothing to do with it. So that was the attempt. Not saying that would have worked, but there was a thought. There was a thought involved. That's why they were doing it. So it wasn't about literally trying to occupy the building as much as it was interrupting the vote to try and kick in obscure rules that would have made the process not dependent upon actual democracy. So that's scary. But it's funnier to just say, what, were they looking for the flag to capture? So I'll do that.
To board the terms of that flag. But the flag of our country was wrapped up in a bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy ended in 1999. So what David and I did is we had filed for copyrights on that flag on the terms of the grammar, so now that if a federal contractor does come in, they would have to comply with the terms of the syntax to create a now space performance for the terms of the contract.
Oh, you can tell he's legit. Look at that basketball. He's so American. He's got a basketball and he's got a flag. That's great. You're nailing it. You're so natural. You're an American hero.
Postmaster-General of the World Corporation.
What is he trying to get across here? Because this is a piece of propaganda. And I mean that in the sense that it is an emotional, piece of media meant to convince you of something. I don't mean it in the capital P sense. It's not state propaganda. I just mean this is him trying to convince an audience that his belief is right and convince them to get involved in his mythology, maybe to buy a book or a seminar or something from him. However, he's making money on this currently. So what is he trying to tell an audience right now in this frame? Because every frame is a painting, as they say. In the frame of this scene, what is he telling us about himself to the audience? He plays basketball, which is very American, I guess. Is he just trying to be like, I'm a normal person. I do the sports. He's patriotic, because he's got an American flag. He's from the American Southwest, it looks like, based on the terracotta themed stuff. And he's got kind of, again, like a vibe of decorations being related to that. What's this flag, by the way? Does anyone recognize this flag with the rainbows and stuff? Genuinely curious if he's appropriating something here, because there does look to be some sort of symbols here that are not something he has connections to, probably. It's the flag is Pacific Northwest tribal art, but don't know what exactly. Yeah, I recognize that it looked like some sort of indigenous design, minus the rainbow maybe, but I could not put a finger on this. Anyway, he's trying to tell us a lot of things. It's interesting. He's trying to set a tone. He's setting an idea of who he is.
Colin Russell -J. Colin Gould is an American hero.
He made this documentary himself. Can you call yourself an American hero in a documentary you write? Why haven't I written myself a documentary? Chat, did you know I'm an American hero? I single-handedly have stopped 30,000 terrorist attacks. I have single-handedly destroyed Applebee's business model.
He is
I'm an American hero, goddammit.
What I think should be the poster child for hero of the planet and what he's done. He's taken on this whole system and figured out how to
I was mistaken. This guy said it, and I trust this guy.
hold them accountable and make them positively perform with the grammar.
I lived at the end of SeaTac International Airport with my father and mother and sister. It was a rough and tumbly neighborhood. My parents, my father was an antenna man and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. I went to private school, but in my neighborhood, most of the kids went to public school. People trying to rob my money, people trying to rob my bikes. Had to go out and fend for myself.
He was in a rough neighborhood, but he went to private school. I'm getting mixed messages.
You know, he had the school of tough knocks. He had to take some bumps and bruises to get some bumps and bruises. So it's fun, you know, it was education, learning about how to communicate, learning about the psyche of people at a young age due to all the strife and the diversifications of the times back in the 70s and 80s.
This is just racism, right? This is just racism? This is just racism, right? He's literally just being like, well, integration in schools happened, so I was upset. Like, that just feels like what he basically just blamed him being bullied on there not being segregation? Jesus Christ. You went to a private school? What?
It was a different energy on the planet. I grew up loving sports, played basketball, baseball, wrestling, football, played for the Des Moines Rams. We played against like Rainier Beach, Renton Lions. Fun times. I was pretty good athlete. My father was also a minister on top of being an antenna man in Seattle, Washington. And he went up and down the old I-99 and met a lot of homeless people and brought in a lot of our different Hell's Angels to live in our backyard, and heard fascinating stories about their walks and their what they had experienced, what they had been through. Gave me a different perspective about the world and the things that they witnessed and were a part of. I've always been kind of a free venture capitalist. I started my first pie business when I was young, 4 to 5 years old. I had apple trees in the backyard, so it made sense to learn how to make apple pies with my mom, and we took them out front. And
should have stuck with that. What if he was just an apple pie baker? That would have been a nicer job.
Had an apple pie stand and sold them, and made a little bit of money. When Mount St. Helens blew, we had a concept to go up to Mount St. Helens and gather the ash and put them in bottles. My grandmother was a science teacher for 5th and 6th grade who had a lot of connections into the school districts, and we were able to bottle the ash, put labels on them, and sell them from elementary school to elementary school all throughout Washington and all across the United States. From the benefits of that, I was able to buy tickets to the Seattle Mariners games, Seattle Supersonics games, Seattle Seahawks games. I was a Seahawk fan. So I have great memories of that when I was a child. I was my grandmother's favorite. We did many things together.
I know this is just kind of like the getting to know him part, but I was Grandma's favorite. I'm sure you were the only one she told that to, hun.
When I was a child, I was my grandmother's favorite. We did many things together, such as I was in a rock club with her, not a rock band, but a rock club where we'd go out and identify the different species of rocks. And I had a rock tumbler. She got me my first rock tumbler, and I would mold and polish rocks. It was very fun for me as a child. Also, she put me in extracurricular schooling, and part of that was 1st through 3rd grade. I went to a summer camp where I learned all about sentence diagramming. I was very fascinated by the sentence diagramming. I learned the different parts of speech and the order of operations of how things were linked together. And I was always very fascinated by how that aspect of communication correlated.
He did geology with his grandmother. That sounds nice? I feel like it's a pun here I don't get.
To business and free venture capitalists. We would go to Colorado in the summertime. My grandpa owned a junkyard where I learned how to work mechanically. I really got fascinated with breaking down material, breaking down cars, breaking down engines, and the mechanical application of things and how things would be put back together. When I moved to Wyoming when I was 15 years old
like a geology
with
term?
my family, I kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. In high school, I was always the guy pushing the envelope from
pushing the envelope, okay? No one thought to wear a sweater with this fucking collar, okay? He fucking blazed that trail.
Tardiness, to how many days you could miss, to letters from your parents saying that you could get out of this or get out of that. And I really pushed the envelope and really challenged the school district as well as the administrators of that specific venue. So as I transitioned into college, I started questioning many structural applications and throwing their rule books back at them in college.
Interesting. So it seems like he had a general issue with like structured education, both high school and college. He had a problem being told like, hey, here's stuff to read and learn. He seemed to disagree with basic truisms of engineering or something, which isn't good if you want to do that.
Going through many trials and tribulations with professors, deans, and the security apparatus of the school systems in college.
Security apparatus? Is he... What you had trouble with school security? Why?
Yeah, in college I was a little bit more interested in the ladies and...
Ah, I see.
Basketball than I was in school. You know, for sure, I chased a lot of women and had a lot of fun. Drawing
that explains it.
Back on things that I had learned as a child, such as sentence diagramming, and it came into such
He's giving you vibes of Horphism, the idea of linguistic relativity, also known as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. The Whorf hypothesis, or Whorfianism, is a principle suggesting that the structure of a language influences speakers' worldview or cognition, and thus individual languages determine or shape the perceptions of the world.
At forefront for me as I dealt with professors, and the professors would challenge me, saying, "Where did you learn how to write this?"
I find that interesting because Jacques Lacan, I know Jacques Lacan. I'm not French, so I say it very American. Jacques Lacan. Similarly had things about disordered thinking and felt that it had something to do with processing through centers of the brain that also managed language, and that thinking had a grammar to it similar to words. Like language, he thought that thinking, that the process of thinking had a grammar, and that when it malfunctioned, it led to delusions or incorrect assumptions, incorrect beliefs.
This way, where did you learn this? And I explained to them that I had learned sentence diagramming, and what they were asking for in their paperwork was unstructured at best. And it really conflicted within me, and I began to fall, kind of asking questions of the professors, number one, that they couldn't answer, and it kind of disenfranchised me with the college apparatus. And as I moved from that, I ran into David Wincole and Miller. We met the day that changed my life, and it changed his life. As we sat down and had a wonderful conversation, I started tearing apart sentence structure for him, and he started showing me about prepositional phrases. We just became really good friends. And I lived with him.
I don't think you were good friends. I think he was using you. I think he saw Mark, and he was like, yep, I can use this kid to help me out.
With me, we'd go fishing, and I was very thankful to run into David. And we became, business partners, and we became really good friends, and it was a love-hate relationship in the end because of the choices that he made compared to the choices that I would have made.
He thinks everything goes back to sentence diagrams. It's a little more complicated than that, but basically, yes. He thinks that the English language as it exists, both verbally and in, legal contracts, is a secret code that's doing evil.
1988, April 6, 1988, I broke the mathematical interface on grammar. And I proved that all grammar, all languages, are a mathematical equation of algebra. And with that, I was able to rewrite the way grammar is used.
So as David and I continued our studies, I was very thankful because he really expanded my mind. Because I had already learned so much about using the procedures from elementary school to high school to college and throwing the rules back at him. As David expanded my mind.
So he had an already existing distrust of authority, distrust of educational figures, and that drew him to David. Makes sense.
I realized that it was the same mechanics that applied on a global level, and I got to continue forward.
Harold Elberman says, so the guy who grew up in a home being told the system was wrong for integration and more by his family, and wrong for its many structural ills, that the homeless, and maybe some unreasonable stuff, depending on what the Hells Angels were up to, that kid grew up to have a reflexive distrust and disdain for all systems and hierarchies. Say it ain't so.
On that, and
it's not even yeah. David, I want to clarify when you say all systems and hierarchies as opposed to unjust hierarchies. Like a hierarchy, and I know I'm agreeing with you, I just want to clarify for the rest of the audience. Like a teacher is a teacher instead of you in the classroom because of the hierarchy that says that they have gone through education and they are in charge of the children in the room and teaching you things. That sort of hierarchy that exists as a function of necessity, basically, as opposed to arbitrary ones that exist to separate people and distribute power in unjustifiable ways. Obviously, like a student needs to be, below the teacher in the classroom in that context.
told me he did not have time to study that. He was only focused on the grammar. And so he said, Russell, he said, you need to be this person because I have no knowledge of this field. And I went in an in-depth study on the banking, the postal, and the military and court mechanics, and I applied them as I went into many courtroom battles for myself. The mechanics of why things work the way they work, the structures behind that, and how to build them back together in a way through the grammar that gave a fairness to the planet. As we were learning about the construct of contract, it came down to the foundation of the flag, because the bearer and the owner of the flag also allows subcontractors, or what they would call federal contractors, to board the terms of that flag. But the flag of our country was wrapped up in a bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy ended in 1999.
Is he going to go into why he believes that a flag, a symbol, has concrete material importance to the seat of government?
Benjamin.
Or is he just going to say it? Because that is interesting. If he just brushes past it, it seems strategic almost to bury that in so much other superfluous information, so that when you get to this thing, he just says it. Maybe you're not even thinking about it. Your guard isn't up, maybe? You're just like, oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Franklin.
Like if you're the kind of person who is a mark for this, No thanks, Baha. I'll have one later, maybe, but thank you.
Was a French attorney working for the English Crown as a secret agent to capture the United States of America.
Oh, I forgot he claimed that. Yeah, he claimed that he was a secret traitor.
1989, the Constitution of the...
He's saying that because Ben Franklin, I believe, was involved in the start of the U.S. Postal Service.
The United States of America was drafted, which was a bankruptcy trust, putting the United States of America into a 70-year international bankruptcy for $3 million. Now, the dollars were in the form of the Bank of England had picked up the note through the Rothschild family. So that then turned the United States into an international bankruptcy corporation. The Constitution of the United States of America was written in an adverb, verb, adverb, adjective, pronoun, adverb, verb, style of grammar. This is called parse. And the parse is what parts of words are, like the word international. IN means no, TER is terra, nation is people, AL is contract.
Oh no! Incorrect word origin. Like some words certainly have etymology that go back to other languages, a lot of the times Latin, but that doesn't mean it's always a literal thing. No, 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 no.
The English language made parse words, and then it, excuse the expression, bastardized them. The is an adverb, modifying declaration.
The is not an adverb. An adverb is something that describes a verb. So like, speedily, you speedily ran. Speedily would be an adverb.
DE is...
You slowly sat down. Slowly is the adverb.
No.
An adverb is not the.
Clara speak, at is contract, ION is contract. Of is an adverb, now making...
Did you say up is an adverb?
Of is an adverb, now making independence. In is no, D is no, pen is right, ans is contract. So he said, you will not write contract and you will not read contract. And then he wrote, we the people. We was a pronoun. The is an adverb, making people a verb.
Again, the is...
So he went ahead and he made the people of America into fictions. You can either be a pronoun nothing, which is a dead entity called nom de guerre, or pseudium, or you could be a verb, which was a condition of...
Again, I want to nitpick the specifics. The specifics are irrelevant. I got to keep reminding myself the specifics are irrelevant. The specifics are irrelevant. Hydrate. H-Bird says, I want this guy to answer the following question.
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is.
Oh, you missed the thing I said earlier. Part of David Wynn Miller, this guy's scam, was he claimed he was one of Bill Clinton's advisors, and that he claimed he came up with that defense. Like, you were making a joke, but that's literally something he claimed when he was alive. That's part of his spiel, is that he came up with that. Yeah. Take your meds.
Illusion fiction.
What David and I did is we had filed for copyrights on that flag on the terms of the grammar, so now that if a federal
You
contract
can't file a copyright on the United States flag. It's the flag of the United States.
does come in, they would have to comply with the terms of the syntax to create a now space performance for the terms of the contract. I got myself in position so when the bankruptcy ended, that I would be the man with the flag standing there with the postal construct in place as the treasurer, postmaster, bank banker. What this
Wouldn't Betsy Ross own it? Betsy Ross sewed the flag. She didn't design it.
means is that those who choose to come in contract with the Title IV
At
flag,
least I think. I think the idea of her designing it was like a apocryphal, wasn't it? That was like a story that was made up as like a, you know, civic mythology, like George Washington and the cherry tree. Steve with a Q says, the great dilemma, the specifics are irrelevant, but the specifics are hilarious. That's a good way to put it, yeah.
must come through the correct grammar.
But did she
of
patent it? That's the real question.
my construct. It must have my thumbprint and autograph on the contract to make it valid, so they could take the terms of their corporation and put it into free venture capitalist.
So much of our society is just made up shit. Good news, it's not just society, it's in your head as well. So much of the things we believe and do just to function are constructs of our minds. I don't mean that in a scary way, it's just a reality of psychology and how it works. We operate on a lot of shit that's arbitrary. It's scary.
We applied to the United Nations to be an independent country because
Social constructs exist within ourselves. We internalize them,
the
I guess is what I'm trying to get across.
condition of quantum language in a world of 8 million fiction people's communication skills was so unique that the 200 members of the United Nations voted to have us have our own country. We had
David, the United Nations doesn't know about you. Stop lying. Again, David died in 2018, so it's fine.
bank charter. We had a constitution all written in quantum language. We had a bank with Gould.
Oh my god,
We
they had
had
a
our-
bank with gold, guys. That's the important thing.
All of our treaties in place with the United States of America, Department of Justice. We sued the United States for the flag of the United States under Title IV.
Why did you have to sue them? You had the copyright, didn't you? That's what the other guy said.
For Section 1, 2,
They're just trying to sue to enforce it.
and 3. Now, we did that on the 25th of July, 1999. And when we did that, we challenged the United States Congress, Senate, Legislature, and Supreme Court to bring forth their correct parse, syntax, grammar, sentence structure, copyrights of the flag of America.
None of that means anything, but again, what he's trying to say is only his secret language is legal for contracts, therefore he was able to file a copyright because his language is the real one, and if the United States doesn't respond, then he wins automatically. Again, I know this is stupid, but that's what they believe.
Couldn't do it. They couldn't even produce
Or
it.
at the very least, it's what they want to convince their marks of, and they do have marks that they have successfully grifted.
Oath of office that was written in the correct parse, syntax, grammar. And on the 12th of August, 1999, the United Nations voted that both Russell and I were independent, sovereign individuals with a flag. We've captured the flag with the correct parse, syntax, grammar. We had our own bank, we had our own constitution, we had our own trust.
The capture the flag thing is so interesting because he's evoking certain ideas. He's evoking symbolic ideas of nations and the symbols of those nations, and how in depictions of conquering, flags take a central piece because of what they symbolize, but he's working backwards and acting as though the symbol is the important part. Like, he sees the statue of, the flag raising on Iwo Jima, and he's like, that was the important part, was the part where we planted a flag, clearly. No. He's, again, using kind of underlying emotional, symbolic beliefs and feelings, and using those to direct people's beliefs as opposed to analytical evidence.
We had treaties with other countries.
He's leading people with vibes.
David and I rewrote that construct on August 12, 1999 at the United Nations. But when we had to wait till the United States came out of bankruptcy in 1999 to file it at the post office in Washington, D.C.
Discordant Bull says, hey, quick note, if your flag can be captured with a letter from one person, then you don't last as long as the U.S. has.
However, because of David's commitments to the people that he was in joinder with, who I refused to be in joinder with, David could not go on that contract to go into Washington, D.C. to claim the flag, so he vacated his position as a ship owner and bearer of the flag in the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., and the Pentagon. And so this is where I came in because of what we had studied in contract law.
This is the part where he's trying to explain David's the originator, but here's where I took over, basically, because he was wrong, and I have corrected his mistake.
To make claim and control the federal contracting style of the terms of the flag. So as I look back, I can see David's concerns on exactly why he did not want to be on the contracts in Washington, D.C. to claim the flag, because the scope of it was so big. And I asked him specifically...
He believes that he is the global postmaster general, which he thinks gives him the ultimate power. He basically thinks he's the president of the world now.
I says, David, are you going to use your body as the surety? He says, no way. He says, I'm not going to do that. He says, I'm afraid. He says, I'm afraid for what's going to happen to you. And I looked at him and I said, hey, David, there's two things I know nothing about: fear and pain. And he looked at me and said, good luck, Russell. He goes, I'm going to sit back and just be a witness. I said, David, that's probably the safest place for you, because I'm not quite sure what's going to happen to me. So they were coming out of the third strike of a 70-year moratorium bankruptcy. 3 strikes and you're out. That's how it works under the 3-strike rule under international bankruptcy laws. So,
international bankruptcy laws? Is that even a thing? Each nation has its own bankruptcy laws. What the fuck do you mean, international bankruptcy laws? We don't have a world Congress that creates that. There are UN resolutions, but there isn't a big enforcement thing for that. What are you talking about?
So because of that, the guidelines, which were the Constitution for the presidency, was going to have to be vacated, which was going to... the United States Postal Service and the United States Postal Office was going to have to vacate under Title 39, Section 101, subsection A and subsection B. So they're going to have to breach their own fiduciary contract timelines. Simultaneously, as they made the breach, they were going to have to vacate the estate, which was the location of the presidency, because the original founding fathers were no longer there to sign off on an amendment or a correction to re-up the terms of the Constitution.
They don't need to be. The mechanism for doing amendments to the Constitution have no bearing on who's amending it, as long as they are members of people who are allowed to. Like, if Congress, by, I forget the vote or whatever, or a delegation of enough states, a majority, 2/3 maybe, decide to do a constitutional convention, they can, but that hasn't really happened. And when amendments have happened, they've happened with overwhelming support. You don't need to be a founding father in order to do amendments. It's in the goddamn Constitution.
Because the Constitution at that point, once they vacated, then it became a worthless document and they didn't have to follow the guidelines. So in the upcoming election of 2000, I knew they were going to have to vacate the presidency of the United States. I did not know how, but I knew they had to. In June of 2000, my grandmother was very concerned that because I was being bashed so hard through the public purview and I was going in and out of jail because of my learning on the timelines and the flag
for
and the things that I was
convention,
doing.
three-quarters for ratification. Oh, yeah. That shit's not happening in the political climate we have today.
The U.S. judicial system, that she wanted me to go back to college because I was so smart.
I can't even imagine a hypothetical future where that happens that isn't dystopian. I'm so divorced from a future that like it wins out in a relatively progressive or even leftist way that I'm so jaded. The idea of a constitutional convention is de facto horrifying to me. I don't want to live in Gould. Just a thought.
She said I could be whatever I wanted. And so I made a deal with her that if they announced a president on the election night of 2000, that I would go back to college. And she had a presidential placemat with all the presidents on there. And I said, Grandma, you believe there's going to be another president? She goes,
okay, there was. It just was after a bunch of bullshit about hanging Chads and the Supreme Court making a bullshit decision.
Absolutely.
Like, there still was an elected president. It just took a little bit.
I said, and then you believe that it's going to be elected on the first Tuesday of November of 2000 here? And she said, yes. I said, okay, I guarantee you that they will not elect.
Yeah, I don't think any of this happened. Again, it's a grift, so I don't...
Guarantee.
At this point, I'm like 70-30 grift true believer.
On that night, I said, I don't know how, but I'm guaranteeing it. But if I'm wrong, I'll go back to college in January for the winter semester. If not, I'm going to continue forward on my path because I am who I say.
Stand by, stand by. CNN right now is moving our earlier declaration of Florida back to the too close to
Captain Squid says, and then his grandma and all her friends stood up in class.
column. Ah. 25 very big electoral votes in the home state of the governor's brother, Jeb Bush.
I think we're familiar with what happened in 2000. I'm going to skip over the news footage because it's like 3 or 4 minutes, and you know the story.
My grandmother and I were having dinner together, and we were watching the votes and the different states come into play and announce who their winners and losers were. And as the thing's starting to tighten up, my grandmother's looking at me, and I'm on the couch. And sure enough, they announced that they had a problem. And I looked at my grandmother and I said, aha! I said, I know. She looked at me, her eyes got big. She said, nobody could predict that. I said, somebody with the knowledge can predict that. And there are people behind the scenes.
But you weren't right. There was a president. It just took a while. And then there have been presidents since then. That was not the end of the American presidency.
Playing a ruse on the American people who know the same storyline. I don't know who they are, but I guarantee you that they will not announce a president tonight. And she looked at me and said, if this is true, you're the smartest person walking the planet.
And his grandma said it, so you can trust him.
Die in peace, for I've given you everything I can, as far as every ounce of energy to get the best education that you can. And you figured something out very big. This is very dangerous. You have the courage and the charisma to carry this out. And I looked at her and I gave her a big hug. And I said, got on my hands and knees, and I was very thankful that night that everything came true, that they could not announce a president, that I had the flag, that we were in position to make a difference for the people, and I continued my plight and my learning from there on. And I was on a roll that night. She just looked at me and she was smiling and laughing. She goes, I don't know how you've done it, but you've done it. She says, do good with that what you have. So then I looked at her and I said, I'll do good for the people of this country and the citizens of the world. So from that night on, I held the secret that there was no presidency, even though some people knew that there was no constitution, that they did not have a flag, they did not have a military.
What I don't understand is, in his head, how does this work? Because if everyone else in the world is operating off of something that you think is untrue, but if everyone else is operating as if it is, if everyone believes that the president is the president, and everyone is functioning like there's a president, then there's a president. Like, what does he think words mean? You know what I mean? It's like he thinks there's some magic missing, and he has the magic, and without it, it doesn't work. Like, you know what I mean? It's like he thinks there's some essence that exists as opposed to it being a social construct, a social reality. You know what I mean?
They did not have a treasury. They did not have any ports. They did not have any department within their construct of government because the founding fathers were no longer there to be sign off on a continuance.
Benekagami says this stuff has the same logic behind fictional language-based magic systems like the ancient language from the inheritance cycle, or true names from Earthsea. They basically are claiming contracts written in quantum are unbreakable, like swearing on the river Styx. Yeah, like they're binding, like there's some sort of ward associated with them in the magical sense. H-Baird says, so he made a difference for the people by making George W. Bush president? No, he doesn't think he was the president. He's the fake president who does all the president stuff, but he's fake, so it doesn't count.
So I did everything I could.
That would be nice if that's how that worked,
stopping the judicial system, to stopping the world banking system, to trying to stop wars. I conducted a military court-martial.
You tried to stop wars? How did that go? You did a bad job.
In Washington, D.C. against those who had falsely put themselves into position as leaders of the people. And in the contract law, not in what they believed, but in contract law, they did not have the right, both in the legality and in the law, to be in position to trick us into these wars. And I did everything within my power to stop that, which is well documented by the Pentagon.
No one has ever
how'd that work out?
Gone to war or a math problem in the history of
like, what's he bragging here is, I failed to stop the invasion of Iraq. Like, okay, like, congrats. I also failed to stop the invasion of Iraq. I was a child at the time, but you know, same accomplishment.
But they've been killing each other over the adverb communication skills of both the religions, the faiths, the political contracts that are written between governments, the political thinking of how governments function, and all the treaties that they write between each other.
They use the Babel language to basically hold us in
Babel, not Bible. That's a bad auto caption. Babel being a reference to the Old Testament story from the Pentateuch about the Tower of Babel in Genesis, where all of the people of the world are scattered, and that's where different languages come from, biblically, is God was upset that humans were working together to build a giant tower, the Tower of Babel, and therefore struck them all to have different languages, and then once they couldn't understand each other, they went to different places in the world. That is the biblical, mythological history of where different languages and cultures come from.
Slavery and servitude, and that locks us into joinder into negative
Pentateuch.
Performing contract. Sergeant told us that this may be your last meal, so you better eat it. I was like, that's not cool. That sounded scary to me. I'm like, are you kidding me? We're going to a military base. There's always a 24/7 chow hall on every military base I've ever been to. And they told us it was only going to be like 45-minute to an hour drive. So I was like, we don't need to eat the MRE. We're good to go. And why do you have these MREs on the table down here when there's a whole terminal back here at the airport full of military members that are starving? Why are you secretly bussing us around the corner and giving us a meal when our other fellow troops are starving back there at the terminal? And we're about to go to a base that has a chow hall. What's going on here? And I warned my friend, I told him, I was like...
So he doesn't like how he saw something happen in the military and therefore he thinks it's a conspiracy as opposed to incompetency or something? Discordant Vol says, "Oh fuck, is that a 4-story tower? I didn't zone for that. God."
Jason, don't eat that, man. I don't have a good feeling about this.
Oh, he thinks that MREs are full of some sort of secret thing?
And he's like, oh, whatever, and he ate it, and kid you not, we get 15 minutes down the road, and everybody's passed out that ate the MRE. Everybody, except me and the bus driver, were not the only ones. We're not the ones who didn't eat the MRE. So
if you were gonna knock a bunch of people out, you wouldn't do it voluntarily by asking if they wanted food. You would do it in a way that they didn't have to ask, and they would notice, hey, one of them didn't take it. They're not gonna pass out. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Which is
Also, you're enlisted in the military. They don't need to knock you out. They can tell you wherever they want you to go because you're in the military. Like, they wouldn't need to knock you out. They'd be like, get on this bus. We're taking you somewhere. You're in the military. We're not telling you where you're going. And you'd be like, all right, let's go. Because you're enlisted in the goddamn military. Like, why would they need to knock you out? I'm confused.
Lunch or whatever. It's a dehydrated prepackaged food. There's little packets in it you can, heat up, pop and heat up, and then add water to it. It's usually powdered something, spaghetti or powdered mac.
You can get MREs. Like, there are YouTube channels of people who try not only modern but antique MREs, which is disgusting, but interesting nonetheless. The food science of MREs is actually a really interesting topic. Not a conspiracy, just a logistical reality of being a military is feeding troops and being able to have food that lasts for a very long period of time.
And cheese or whatever. So we were going down the road and our escort pulled off about the 15-minute mark. Just pulled off on the side of the highway and the bus just kept driving. And I noticed everybody on the bus was knocked out, like passed out.
No, I've never had
I tried waking
one.
up Jason. I was like, and he was just like, oh. I could tell. I was like, that was it.
You can get like MREs from like oh god damn it. Give me a sec. She's come on, honey. Let's put you into chair. Yeah. Chair. Yeah, you can't push any buttons there, can you?
I was right. They drugged us. If not something worse, I don't know. Apparently it was just some kind of sleeping something inside the MREs. And we kept driving.
They're very calorically dense because they assume they're being eaten by people who are doing a lot of physical activity or might need it when they're out somewhere in a place where they might not get a lot of food. So, Discordant Volt says the line between unconscious and dead is a narrow one.
Driving, we drove out to the edge of town and there was these high sand dunes and there was like this little trailer on the right side and the bus driver pulled over and parked it, and we're like out in the middle of the end of the desert and there's no lights, nothing out there. And this one little trailer, it looked like a little 7-Eleven trailer, no gas pumps, just over sitting way.
What's a 7-Eleven trailer? I'm confused. Peeplord says, I've seen so much nonsense said on this channel about the military. It's almost never how it's portrayed here, but you're 100% correct about them just telling us to go somewhere random for no reason. Yeah.
Way off the road. It's like 200 feet off the road. It's kind of far back. But no one was there. It was like 3-something in the morning. And a car pulls up, talks to the bus driver.
She doesn't have a keyboard toy. So I should get her one.
In Arabic or whatever language they were speaking in, and then took off. And then a SUV pulls up.
Did he ever get above the position of private? Just curious.
In front of the bus and backs out. Then that same car that came by a while ago, it pulls up, and then these two guys dressed in Middle Eastern Arab wear, they jump out of the SUV and jump in the car and take off. This is like 3:30 in the morning. Like, what are they doing? Who does that? Who would park a SUV in front of a bunch of military troops bus at 3 in the morning? And why are all my fellow airmen asleep on the bus?
They're fucking tired. They're tired and ate a bunch of highly caloric food.
Out. And I was like, it's going down. There's a bomb in that SUV. And we're
Discordant Vol says, oh geez, just looks like he lost weight since his last physical. That perfect dose is now an overdose.
We're all going to die. There's nothing out here to harm. We're right on the edge of town. No one
like
around.
He's surprised he saw people in Middle Eastern traditional garb in the Middle East. Like, why does he find this suspicious? Like, you're in someone else's country. Why are you thinking that's sus?
I tried waking up Jason. I was like, it's going down, it's going down. And I got up and I started walking up to the front of the bus, and our supervisor woke up. And he's all disoriented because he was
your supervisor? Would you not say your commanding officer? I genuinely don't know. Is that normal verbiage? Would you say your supervisor in the military?
asleep. I don't know.
Because that feels a little weird.
I don't know how much of the MRE he ate, or even if he ate one at all.
Is this entirely fictional? Is this just stupid stolen valor?
He was asleep. So he was like, what's going on, Sergeant Lester?
He did say airmen.
Look,
he did say that. So
if we don't get out of here, it's going to end bad. We got to get out of here right now. He's like, just sit down, Sergeant Lester. I got this. And so I turned around and I started walking back, and I was like, no, he doesn't know the urgency.
He claims he's a sergeant in this story. Does this story make sense if he's a sergeant in this story?
He was asleep. He just doesn't know that he thinks that there's just the SUV sitting in front of us that was parked there. He didn't see all of it happen.
First line supervisor, NCOIC maybe? What's NCOIC?
I know he didn't because he was asleep.
Non-commissioned something, something, something?
I know.
Something.
It just, instinct took over, and I was like, no, I have
You'd say my NCOIC, my sergeant, my LPO,
I
officer
have
in charge.
to do something here. I'm not going to die here. So I turned around.
Non-commissioned officer in charge.
And I yelled at him, and I told him, if you don't get this bus moving now, I'm going to rip that guy out of the seat and drive this bus myself. And he's like, I got this, Sergeant Lester. I got it. Now just go sit down. And I didn't go sit down. I was still like, I was ready to grab the guy. And I was like, we got to get out.
I feel like in the military, if you did that to the person in charge of you, you would be in a lot of trouble. Like, is this not... I don't know. I've never been in the military. It just seems to me that there's a hierarchy, there's a structure that exists for a reason. And when you don't do things you're told, that's insubordination. That's like not good. They don't like that.
Get out of here. I mean, it's ticking. And I can't believe it didn't blow up, right? And he yelled at the guy, and he cranked up the bus. And then Sergeant Gray turned to me, and he's like, so where do we go, Sergeant Lester? I was like, well, there's a faint light over here in the desert. Let's go out there and see if that's the base. And if not, I know all the way back.
You don't know? They don't know where the base is?
The airport. We'll be good. So we got out there, and it was the base. It was the only thing there. I don't know the name of the base. All I remember is there was a bunch of Arabic signs that...
You're in this story, you're in the Middle East. What? There's a bunch of Arabic signs. You're in the Middle East. That doesn't specify it. That does not help me on GeoGuessr.
Real long words. I don't...
Right? In this story, they don't have radios or, like, satellite phones or anything to communicate with anyone. What a strange story he's making up. Captain Squid says, I'm starting to suspect the closest this guy has gotten to the military is playing Call of Duty.
Dude, all I know is we were in Qatar. It's where we were. And
if this is the Air Force, they don't have plain sergeants. They have staff sergeants, tech sergeants, and master sergeants, or first sergeants. Okay.
Getting out there and then getting confirmation from the military police on base that this is like a common occurrence.
He doesn't know the name of the base.
Blowing buses.
Marcus Drake says, went outside in America the other day and saw a lot of people wearing blue jeans. Suspicious.
Up is okay.
All the signs were in English.
I mean, like, how many of us you got to kill before someone does something? This is madness. This was back when George Bush Jr. was in office. He was supposedly in charge of us, And then later I found
supposedly
out that he wasn't even a president because he was court-martialed by J. Gould.
He wasn't. He said he did that, but that didn't happen.
Postmaster General of the world. When I got back
Apparently
from
he's
Iraq,
claiming it was Qatar, which is not... That doesn't make sense. Because that's in Dubai. We were not in Dubai.
on that TDY, temporary duty assignment, I tried to go to the JAG.
I'm trying to figure out, is this just a weird case of, like, this person wants to live... Like, does he believe this happened? Okay, here are my three options. Option 1, something happened, and he actually was in some branch of the military, but not for very long, and it didn't go well, and he's delusional, and a lot of those experiences have been kind of mixed up in his head with delusions, and that's the story is the result of that. It's maybe half-remembered bullshit of reality mixed with a bunch of delusions. 2, he's never been in the military, and it's entirely a delusion, like that hard of a delusion. Or 3, he knows this isn't true, maybe is a conspiracy theorist, but he's making up this story because he's doing stolen valor and or thinks it legitimizes the cause and thinks that it's a means to an end and therefore justified. I'm not sure which it is, but those are my 3 thoughts right now. Partial true mixed with delusions, full-on delusions, or lie.
Because I felt like, you know, there's something bad going on here. And
there are Air Force bases, like, all over the goddamn world. I imagine in Dubai as well. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just confused by his story in general. He seemed to know nothing about it. He seemed to know nothing. And he was very specifically talking about, like, Iraq earlier.
I need to tell the lawyers. JAG wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't call me. I tried meeting with the commander of my unit. He wouldn't talk to me. And then I was like, okay, I just need to check out of here.
Benikagami says militaries have strict hierarchies and emphasize discipline because in chaotic situations, life and death depends on quick coordination and teamwork. Authoritarian leadership structures are the only currently known way to do that effectively, so many people think it works like in MASH. For better or worse, the military is not MASH. Yeah.
This is over with.
Where am I on the grifter scale? The Gould guy, I think, is griftier. I'm leaning more towards grift than I was at the beginning of the
have anything
stream.
to do with this. I know what's going on.
There is an element, I think, of delusion, though, but I do think he is aware that this is a money-making thing for him.
And I ended my contract with the reserve unit, United States Reserve Unit. And at the time, my civilian job, I was working over at
assuming these are legit, which I have no idea, then I'm assuming he actually was in the military and had delusions that precluded him from continuing.
And I was one of their top performing supervisors.
It says Iraq, right? There's the Air Force one.
I would say I was probably their #1 supervisor they had because I won all kinds of awards. We had all hands meeting. They put my projects up there and said, you know, pretty much we were #1. After I got back, they laid me off, and for no reason. So I felt like I'm getting retaliated against because I have knowledge of some bad stuff that happened.
I see. Okay. It definitely seems like he was in the military, he was in the Air Force, probably is dealing with his mental illness issues, speculatively, of course, but something's going on here, and he has folded in this idea that he was probably released from the military specifically because of mental issues. He has folded that into the conspiracy because that's how conspiracies work. It's a shame. It's a shame. Hope he gets help. DM Trey says, look at the dates. It was for October to December. Oh, yeah. Did he basically only get through, like... oh, no. Oh, God. So he probably went through, like, basic training, got sent for, like, 2 months, and then got Section 8'd. That's a shame.
Happened overseas.
Like, it's good in the sense that, like, he got sent home because he's clearly not stable and should not have been in that situation. I mean, no one should have been in that situation, but that's a whole other discussion. He certainly should not have been, and I'm glad that it was noticed and he got sent home.
Military, and they're a military contractor. So they kind of like got a conflict of interest here, you know. So all that said and done, they destroyed me. They run my credit.
I think that was the time of the actual deployment, not including basic, because it did say Iraq, so I assume he did get shipped out. So I think he probably made it through basic.
They basically told me if I didn't sign the non-disclosure agreement, and that was with Lockheed Martin that I was working with there in Fort Worth, Texas, they were basically going to take back whatever you put in 25%, they match it 75%, and basically they were holding that over my head. I worked hard for 5 years and I packed that thing as full as I could get it, and I was like, if I don't sign this, I'm losing my 401k. So they hold it over your head, like either you sign this fiction document or we're going to take all the money back. And I was like, I had no choice. I had to survive. I had to sign their paperwork and get out of there. Everyone I went to the lawyer.
For some reason I said Qatar is in Dubai. Dubai is a city in the United Arab Emirates. Why did I do that?
I went to the people in charge of me in the military, and none of them wanted to help me. And then when I saw Russell's grammar, I was like, that is the solution I need. He can actually, the grammar can hold these people's volition on trial and hold them accountable for
No, now he's talking about working after the military at Lockheed Martin.
Actions. And how are they getting away with killing us and blowing us up on buses? Like, how do they...
So he's trying to claim that the United States is doing that? Yikes. Peep Lord said, here's how I know this is absolute nonsense. At no point did he or anyone in this story draw a dick in anything. We draw dicks in the sky and space and the bottoms of the sea. God can't see that one. So you're like high school kids. Fun. I'm glad I didn't go into the military. If you did, cool. I hope he got some money and some skills. Like, holy shit. That would have killed me.
It just didn't add up. I'm just like, we need a solution to this. And Chief, when I heard that he court-martialed Bush Jr., and he wasn't even a president, and he authorized this war and sent us over there, and when I was there, I actually saw the Iraqis on base. They were held at gunpoint. Trust me, they're not learning nothing.
So he recognizes failings of America's, let's call it foreign policy, in Iraq, and he also was dealing with mental illness, and because of these things, a distrust in the system combined with paranoia that's probably from some underlying issue. Oh boy, yeah, he becomes a perfect mark for someone like David-Win Miller. It's a shame. Sucks. I hate seeing people who are vulnerable like this get that treatment. They're clearly in need of help, and instead of someone actually helping them, someone sees they're vulnerable and takes advantage of that. Discordant Vol says, all of my patrol units would have been fantasy creatures, or rather, all my patrol routes would have been fantasy creature dongs. It would look like the military was sponsored by Bad Dragon. Jesus.
They are held prisoners at gun.
It really feels like to me that there should be harsher sentences. Like, if you're found guilty of committing fraud against someone who is considered, like, vulnerable, like, mentally vulnerable, like, there'd have to be some sort of legal test conceived. But someone like this, who is delusional and maybe is not rational, maybe not be in the best mindset, if you commit fraud or scam someone like this, there should be extra time on your sentence. There should be extra punishment. Like, you really got to disincentivize it. There's so many scams these days that prey specifically on people, like, who have issues, whether it be actual, like, delusional disorders, or they're just more generally paranoid and distrustful because society's big and complicated and fucked up in a lot of ways. Not good.
One point. Our Postmaster-General of the World Corporation, Russell-J. Gould, is an American hero. He is the what I think should be the poster child for
H-Beard says his certificate said staff sergeant, which means he'd been in the Air Force for at least 4 years. My guess is he started presenting signs of schizophrenia, which present in your 20s. That totally makes sense, of course. For those who don't know, schizophrenia tends to pop up around 25. In your 20s. 25 is usually the number they tend to have in, like, textbooks, but that is usually when it pops up. It's very sad. So that makes sense. That makes sense. His deployment might have only been for 2 months, which may have been why those certificates had that, or the dates were different, and it was just misread.
Or hero of the planet, and what he's done.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, Marcus Drake. Something like that, but a standard where you can, like, check the state of a victim that isn't about necessarily just, like, elderly or minors, but, you know. Something that shows that they are more susceptible to being scammed.
He's taken on this whole system.
It certainly wouldn't be perfect, but adding a set of negative incentives might help a little.
Out how to hold them accountable and make them positively perform with the grammar. He broke the code to their Babel language, and they used the Babel language to basically hold us in slavery and servitude, and that locks us into joinder into negative performing contract. Where his stuff changes that around, no slavery, positive performance contract, one word means one meaning, not 900 different meanings.
That's impossible. Every word is contextual. Words do not necessarily even mean the same thing to one person or another because we all have connotations to them. The level of precision you are implying is existent in this conlang is impossible. Even if you did, you had a language that you created, and every word has an exact meaning with no other meanings. The way humans speak, over time it would drift into what we do. We create connections. We create symbols that mean things. We turn words into symbols that have meaning beyond the literal. Like, you just can't do that. It doesn't exist. The best you can do is create rules and guidelines for specific contexts, like the law, you know? That's why in the law words have specific meanings, but in a different context those meanings might be different. It's the best you can do. You can't top-down determine language. Nemesaur, thank you for gifting 10 Tier 1 subs. Generous as always. Thank you so much for all the support.
And we know where the dictionary is. There's only one. Not.
Fear of ambiguity seems to be common with these guys in general. That is a thing with conspiracies, is people are looking to get rid of ambiguity as much as they possibly can, because that breeds ambivalence and confusion, and those are not feelings people like to sit with, so they come up with narratives, or find narratives, to resolve that discomfort. Yes, the dictionary is not prescriptive, it is descriptive, which is great. Discordant Vol, thank you for gifting 5 Tier 1 subs. Generous with the gift subs today, thank you.
Multiple ones.
Appreciate it, people.
So he gives you full closure, right? And it's just the technology of what he's done, he's a genius. To think of all of this, like, to figure out the...
I'm gonna do a documentary and bring someone in to just, like, just say ridiculously unfounded, flattering things about me.
Noun space.
That seems legit.
Because our contracts that we deal with now deal with past tense, negative no contract words, negative performance.
Yes, sometimes you have to deal with definitions in the past tense, or the present tense, or the future tense, because that's how language works, because sometimes we're talking about things in the past, or the present, or the future. Yes! Why say much word when few word do trick? Fenekagami says, frankly, we need to find ways to disincentivize scams in general. I think culturally shifting from seeing people like that as, quote, savvy businessmen to conning lying dirtbags and treating scammers like pariahs would help more than laws. I think it's multifaceted. A good old-fashioned shaming campaign couldn't hurt. Did I see this? Canadian judge rules thumbs up emoji can represent a contract agreement. I didn't see that. Yikes. Oops, wrong one.
No one signs the contract but you, so there's no one to be held accountable but you, right?
If no one signs a contract but you, then who is the contract with? A contract is a legal agreement between two or more parties. Parties don't need to be individuals, they can be organizations or corporations or fictional entities, but there needs to be at least two parties. It's a contract, it's definitional. Starry Beauty, thank you for gifting a sub. Hell yeah, kicking off a hype train. Thank you very much.
Negative performance. So, and it's also in the future.
12% to level 4 on the hype train.
Because they use...
Hell of a start thanks to all those gift subs from Discordant Vol and Nemesaur. Thank you very much.
Words that are in the future. We're in the now space. We're not in the past, and we're not in the future because it hasn't occurred yet.
Sure, but things do happen in the past and things happen in the future, which we have to discuss sometimes. This is interesting. It belies an uncomfortability with the fact that things exist other than the present. That's so interesting. Legendary Super Lesbian, thanks for gifting a sub. You're 25% to level 4.
Always in the now. And Chief figured that out, and he locked it into the grammar.
Interesting. What about that is good for him? Huh. What does he get out of... He brought that up specifically. What does he like about there being nothing but the present? Huh. There's something there. I'm taking mental note. Weird during a hype train, but I actually have to urinate very badly. So during this hype train, for a second, Chair's gonna be in charge. So Chair can have, the hat, and, the Back to the Future trilogy. The Chair will direct the hype train. Hype for Chair. Be right back after I pee. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, 4K Trilogy of Back to the Future. 1 second. They must be even. What did I miss? Lots of chat burning down, of course. And then Cloud Wizard says, I live for chair trains, and Fenekigami says, incorrect, sure, your entire experience is in the past. Everything you see is a picture of the past that your brain is just now processing. Technically, humans have no true concept as the present, as we are constantly stuck catching up to it. Hoo boy. This reminds me of a time that my dad, I've talked about this before, but to think about how some people think and how certain realities can be so uncomfortable for people that they deny them, I should express this. Minute left on the hype train, 31% to level 4. So my dad, we didn't watch stuff a lot, you know? He was, as I've said before, kind of an abusive, distant, alcoholic guy with a lot of his own problems. Peeplord says, OMG, Hannah, you're not gonna like Chair's opinions on the conflict when you see the VOD. Oh, God. 30 seconds on the hype train. Anyway, we didn't watch a ton of stuff. We watched The Office on Thursday nights, I think is when it was, as a family. And that was about it. We didn't really watch stuff together. But one time, my mom convinced him to watch something I wanted to watch together, and it was a special on the Science Channel, we had satellite TV, and I really liked the Science Channel, and there was something on with Michio Kaku, because he was on half the shows on that goddamn channel. Anyway, a discussion about relativity came up, and it used the example of, like, if you were going at the speed of light, you know, everything would be going slower relative to you, because that's how time is. So this is a pretty good Science Channel layman explanation of how relativity works, as Einstein described, and my dad was like, that's bullshit. And I was like, what? And I was like a kid at the time. This was incredibly frustrating, because of course, kids can be assholes and think they're right when they're not, but the difference was when I was a kid, my dad's legit like a right-wing chud type. So, like, he actually would spout misinformation and anti-science stuff, and it would be frustrating, because as a kid, you don't really know the difference between when you're wrong as a kid and when you're right, but the adult thinks you're wrong because they're actually wrong and they don't respect a kid. So anyway, my dad was literally arguing, probably drunk too, about, no, that's not true. Relativity isn't real, because it made him uncomfortable, because that's just, quote, not how it works, because in his day-to-day life, he doesn't see it. It reminds me of Hans, and how he only believes animals that he sees in his day-to-day life are real, like squirrels. Like, there are just some personality types that, for whatever reason, if they lack some kind of personal, anecdotal, experiential memory or relation to something, like, they don't get it. They don't trust it. They don't believe it. It's interesting. We've noted this before when talking about how social media helps spread conspiracies. Same kind of people that are more likely to trust a fake news article because their friend from town, their friend from the bar, their friend from work, their cousin shared it on Facebook, so they trust it because their idea of trustworthiness comes not from evidence or necessarily the original source, but socially who is sharing it with them. It's almost like their brains are still set to live in little communities on the prairie, and they don't understand abstract trust relationships with, like, institutions, but instead rely upon neighbors and sort of communal consensus to find the truth. Scary. Scary and interesting.
So that everyone is on the same page. We're all here together in the now space. And we owe that man more than a medal. He's an amazing hero. I just can't, words can't even describe what he's done.
Personality types or mental illnesses, that's a difficult topic on this because, like, sometimes it is, and I'm not saying I know the difference, I'm not, like, trained or anything, but sometimes it feels like, and this is touched on in Political Paranoia by Robbins and Post, which is a pretty good paper or a book based on some of their work about conspiracies, is there's a very fine line between what we perceive as outright mental illness versus just delusional beliefs. Like, there are people who have clinical consistent delusions that are lifelong and caused by, like, schizoaffective personality disorders or schizophrenia or other delusional disorders. But then there are people who don't actually have something clinical. It might not be a brain imbalance or something caused by, like, trauma or something, but for whatever reason, there's some need that isn't being filled, and they believe delusional things. A lot of the people in the meme stock community, for instance, at this point, a lot of them are actually people who probably suffer from mental illness, but, like, when I first started covering meme stocks, a lot of them were just people who had delusional beliefs, which we are all, at least in theory, susceptible to. Be wary of motivated thinking. It takes you down very dark, dark paths. Always check. Never assume that you're just right and can never be wrong. Harold Elboman says, you had a question about why he's so fixated on the present. As a person who teaches grammar, at least part of the time, I've had to make a lot of relevant-to-life example sentences on demand. For these guys, I'd say the past is full of debts, and the future is full of consequences. The conditional is to be avoided at all cost. The subjective is their kryptonite. Or the subjunctive, rather, is their kryptonite. Interesting. it's an interesting anecdote. I'll keep that in mind and try and vet that against examples that I see. Because I could certainly see that being a thing. I'm wondering if any of it has to do with, like, difficulty processing the past, as well as when we think about the future, it is an exercise in analyzing the present as well as the past. It is a logical deduction of A to B, therefore C, right? 1 + 1 = 2. The events that are in motion today might result in whatever you think the conclusions are, and I'm wondering if some people have difficulty with that, and if those faculties have any correlation with the same faculties that cause people to be more conspiratorial. Again, a lot of it feels like the bedrock is confusion. People are confused, either because of a clinical reason or because of some other, like, reason that's in their life or a specific set of circumstances. There is a confusion, there is misunderstanding, there is unease, and that unease must be filled with a narrative that explains it and makes it not your fault, makes it solvable, makes it material and external. Those are the big things, is that confusion, regardless of the source. So that might be connected in some way, but I don't know. Night, Janardi.
It's like
If you're on YouTube, I don't know how many people are on YouTube today. I know it was having issues and there isn't a lot of chat activity on YouTube. In fact, let me actually look real quick. How's YouTube doing? But if you are on YouTube and watching, do me a favor and give the stream a like. It would be much appreciated. Let me check real quick if anyone's on YouTube. Oh yeah, there's like 80 people on YouTube. The chat's just very quiet today or something. Alright, make sure you like the stream. There's 43 likes and there's 80 of you there. I see you. Like the stream.
Court-martials after
How did he court-martial George W. Bush if George W. Bush is still out and free and never faced any consequences for war crimes? Same with, like, any of the people involved in the Iraq War.
1999, he kept going down to, he went to D.C., down by the obelisk. There's a mall down there that he...
I agree, Moss Sloth. Like, I think there is, in part of it, a gendered issue, but broadly as a society, teaching people to be more comfortable with not knowing things, teaching them to be comfortable in understanding that that feeling of not knowing and confusion doesn't have to be scary. There was a book that I read in high school that was, like, really formative and important to me, and I don't agree with everything in the book. It was written by Penn Jillette, the magician famous from Penn and Teller, who I respect for a lot of things. I really like the show Penn and Teller Bullshit. I don't agree with everything in it. Penn's quite libertarian, and there's some pretty fucking out-of-date stuff there. But there was a book that Penn wrote that I read in high school, and the introduction to the book told a story about someone that Penn used to work with at a diner. And this guy wasn't the most intelligent guy, but Penn liked him a lot. And the reason was because unlike some people who maybe might not know a lot, but are kind of annoying because they're overconfident and think they know more than they do, this guy would just say, I don't know. And Penn loved that, and it taught him something, and that is, one of the most important things you can learn to do as a person is to say, I don't know, honestly. If someone asks you a question, your immediate response, and I think for someone with maybe ADHD or anxiety, this is going to ring true, because this is something that hit me. You panic in social situations. You feel expectations of you. There are social scripts that are expected of people, so if someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, sometimes, maybe a lot of the time, your immediate response is going to want to have an answer. Find something to say that sounds like you kind of know, even if you don't, when in reality, the proper script, if anyone needs to hear this, if you don't know the answer to a question, the appropriate and good response is, I don't know. I don't have enough information. That seems basic, and I assume a lot of you are old enough to know that this is like something that is important and good, but it was just something I read in high school that hit me at the right moment and made me recognize never to try and act like I know more than I do. Know your own limits. Recognize them. It's good. I've not always been perfect at that, but I try my best. It's okay to not know. You are a single person. No one knows everything. No one knows most things. It's okay to not know. There is no shame in that. We live in a world full of wonderful tools to find answers to your questions. There's no shame in not knowing. No one knows things tabula rasa. We all have to learn. I think if we taught that to younger people in school, I think if that was a bigger message in society, that there's no shame in being wrong, the only shame is knowing that you're wrong or being told you're wrong by everyone around you, and not at least checking it, not at least checking yourself, not assuming you know everything about everything, or every opinion, like, is the most important and equal. Like in medicine, not everyone's opinion matters. Medical professionals' opinion matters. You know what I mean? Just because you don't know the answer doesn't mean someone doesn't know the answer. Someone does. At least for a lot of things. Anyway. That was certainly a tangent. Fenekagami says, to steal a line from Red of OSP, my favorite period of history is 1989 to present because humanity peaked with my birth and subsequent existence, and humanity will be all downhill after I die. Discordant, Discordant Volt. I wasn't going to read this because it wasn't a bits message, but like it seems good, so. The trick is to know enough about anything to get them talking in such a way that they explain the subject while thinking you're explaining things to them. I just say, I don't know, explain. I think that's good. But sure. And Marcus Drake says, apparently Penn said he's fundamentally reassessed his libertarianism because of how people responded to COVID, especially anti-maskers. That's good. That's good. Did he finally learn that, like, oh, you can't necessarily count on people to be responsible and respectful towards each other? Took long enough. Still, though, as a skeptic and someone who tries to debunk and understand things that are untrue, I have a lot of respect for the work Penn has done, even if I don't agree with everything he's ever done or said.
He would go to and hold court, and he would court-martial everyone who wouldn't stop and correct. There's a title, a government title, Title 42, 1986, and it basically says, if you don't stop and correct, then you're part of the problem. So you're going to be held accountable. Like, if you tell someone, hey, you're a cop, and this guy's robbing a bank, and you don't go do something about it, then of course you're going to get fired or be held accountable as part of the bank robbery because you didn't do your job as a police officer. You didn't go over there and stop the bank robbery, right? So the Title 42, 1986, Chief was the only one who stopped and corrected. When he brought the language forward and shared it with them legally through the mail, served them, ran timelines on them, they didn't stop and correct. So now we've got to hold them accountable. And I've ran into all kinds of problems doing that because I've used Chief's paperwork where we served a base and they play games with you. You go to the front gate and they're like, oh, there's no one here.
I'm sorry, you're trying to serve a military base a legal document at the front gate? Again, with the overconfidence, if you want to sue an entity that's like a governmental entity, they will have a mailbox that is an official public address that you can find to send lawsuits. You do not show up and just be like, I have a lawsuit for the U.S. Army.
Go to the website.
That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
You go to the website, no, the public affairs number is hidden, or if you do call it, it hangs up on you. Or if you do get to a voicemail, no one ever calls you back. So you can never get a hold of anybody on your military base because we're needing to contact the military base because Chief mailed all the bases. He did 10,000 mailings to all the bases in America. He served them legally and ran timelines on them, and he served them what's called a war-powers-rights contract. And
a war powers rights contract?
For us citizens out here, whether it's mainly for the claim of life citizens, but it also...
He's saying that when he tried to call military bases, it didn't go well and he didn't get the person he wanted to talk to, so he thinks they're trying to avoid him, which they probably are because, again, he's just spouting nonsense and making accusations about stuff that isn't true. So they're probably just like, no, we're not going to connect you to anyone. Discordant Vol says, I love how these guys always go to the military bases because they're actually way more responsible with use of force than cops. Very true.
Also has the rights of the people who violate our rights. He has that all built in there. It's over 9,000 things that we need in order to operate during this martial law theater right now that we're in. And it's real easy if you want to check to see if we are in martial law. Just go to any local court or state governor's office, and there's going to be a spire on top of the flag.
Not always, but if there is, that's decorative. It's like the fringe on a flag. It's a decorative element. It's not indicating anything symbolically that's legally relevant.
The spire means we're at war. They are at war with the people.
Nope, it doesn't. And if they were at war and it was a secret, I don't think they'd have a super secret flagpole to denote it. Fenekagami says, Fenny's wife here, question, I understand what you're saying and I'm grateful for your support. I'm probably not going to say this right. What happens when I don't know is treated as a shameful answer and people treat it with hostility and almost like you're lying? Well, then those people are assholes. Like, I know that's not, like, super helpful. You're asking kind of a social question here, and I'm not good at those. I'm really bad with social interactions and interpersonal relationships. I'm terrible at it. I would say it's time to assess why they feel that way. Like if they're mad at you, I'd be like, why are you mad? I just don't know. Like what do you assume I know? Highly dependent upon the person, I guess. Like if they're assholes, I'd just say go away from those people if possible.
Basically. And that all contract is suspended. So if all contracts suspended, we're in martial law.
That's not what that means either. What? Martial law is a specific thing. It's not the result of contracts being void? Question mark.
And that's what they're hiding from the people.
By the way, if you're watching on Twitch or anything and
So
you
on
haven't
February-
already, give me a follow. I'm trying to say that more often. Follow me, dang it.
February 20th, 2003.
I do content real okay.
David Hyphen Miller and myself had a peace treaty.
Be aware of sea lioning. True. Sea lioning, for those who don't know, is asking questions in bad faith just to waste your time to avoid the issue at hand.
Authorized by the Secretary of the Navy's office for the Title IV 1-to-1.9 dimension flag, as well as the Global Banking Constitution, which I had
The Global Banking Constitution? I don't think that's a thing.
rewritten the structure of the banking systems of planet Earth and the
Smash
crypto
that
currencies
follow
and the things that
button.
I own copyrights to.
Or touch the follow button gently, whichever you'd prefer.
And the...
How do you unfollow then refollow? No, you can't leave. It's like the Hotel California. You're stuck.
Secretary of the Navy's office autographed the contracts, endorsed them, and I went back to the Pentagon on December 12th, 2004, with my peace treaty and the terms of the peace treaty, that there were no presidents, there was no presidential election, and there were a lot of other terms, and they breached the peace of the contract. They put me
What do I have against sea lions?
on the phone
Their eyes.
with the commanders
Freak
and
me
the
out.
people
They're
that
too
I had been
big.
speaking with
Those eyes are too big.
since 1996 at the Pentagon, and they said, Russell-J. Gould, what happens when peace gets breached? I was like, heck no. That means I gotta go to war.
You know what's funny about this? I realized who he reminds me of. Daddy Derek from Cool Cat. Is anyone familiar with Cool Cat? He gives me Daddy Derek vibes.
War. They're like, yes, you do. You'll be back. And so they caused me to move into a conditioned state of the martial-law because they broke the peace, which were the terms of the contract. The terms of the contract were that I was Postmaster General, Commander-in-Chief, and many other highly sensitive classified documentations that we had under contract together. By using brute force and physicality to
He earned the title Daddy Derek too, because he was in an issue of Playgirl.
physically remove me from the Pentagon that broke the terms of the peace. Therefore, I had
Fenny says, Fenny's back. It's okay, Hannah. My wife is also bad at social interactions. FYI, you just called my mother-in-law an asshole. By the way, have you heard some... Sorry. Have you heard some anti-vaxxers are referring to themselves as purebloods? Yeah, I have seen that. It's gross. That's been going on for quite a while.
to move into a conditional state of the martial-law. So on December 12, 2004, at the Pentagon, I came under contract as Commander-in-Chief conducting martial-law. What that meant was I conducted the largest military court-martialing in the history of planet Earth, taking down the World Court at The Hague, as well as the world judicial systems, trying to stop these wars that were falsely being perpetrated upon the great citizens of this country, as well as the citizens of Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen.
Chat's weird on YouTube? Let me take a look. I don't see it. Looks normal to me, more or less. I don't see it. There it is. Is it a you thing? To me, it looks fine. Is it a me thing?
Yemen and around the world. For these were all done under false and misleading pretenses, under a fraudulent ruse, because there was no president and there was no post office to...
But if everyone agrees that there is a post office and there is a president and they function as the post office and the president, then what are you even saying? You're just saying you don't think it's legitimate. You're trying to question the legitimacy. Evidence that. You can't just say it.
Go to war. And I published that, and I can...
Hot take, there's no good group obsessed with blood purity. You know, I think that's an astute observation.
Conducted the world's largest court-martialing at the Washington Obelisk in Washington, D.C. every 45 days for
the Washington Obelisk.
4 years, where I conducted numerous...
Who is this guy? This is the protege to David Wynne Miller, the quantum grammar guy. This guy's in charge of quantum grammar now.
Trials with 20 to 50 video cameras on me at all time, with their microphones, with a Chinook and Apache helicopter sometimes above my heads, with their cameras out, with their guns looking at me, and I conducted a trial based upon...
What does the post office have to do with going to war? Do you need to send someone a certified letter to invade their country? He believes that the post office is in charge of the whole world, that the post office is secretly the highest governmental body in the world, and that the postmaster general is like the president of the world. Except he's the real postmaster general, so he's the real president of the world.
Authorization, and based upon stopping the war that the soldiers were rused into. The court-martialing was against George-Walker Bush, Richard-Bruce Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, and so many others. I can't even... There were literally hundreds, if not thousands of persons that were court-martialed within the construct. I alerted all military bases, U.S. military bases on the planet, where I received documentation back from the military bases as the Commander-in-Chief. I also held duty posts where the U.S. Marine Corps showed up in uniform to talk to me as the Commander-in-Chief. I met with many Navy SEALs. It was just a copious amount of work. There was over 10,000 mailings that went out in the trial itself. In the trial itself, I tried to stop the vaccines against the soldiers.
Jesus Christ. I like that his list, like, he just lists thing after thing that he failed to do. Like, I tried to do this, I tried to do that. What is he even doing here? He's not even trying to establish credibility in action. He's trying to establish purity of belief, purity of conviction towards a certain group of people, anti-vaxxer conspiracy types. He's not trying to act as though he has actual power. He's trying to act as though, if I was in power, I would have done everything right, quote-unquote, by conspiracy standards.
As well as rewrote the construct for all the Veterans Affairs. So I wrote the administrative mechanics for the U.S. Veterans Affairs for wounded...
It's like he's trying to make a case to a conspiracy theorist to say, if you believe that I'm the leader of the world, look at all the things that you agree with me about. It's less about trying to rhetorically extol evidence, but rhetorically be like, hey, do you like this narrative I'm spinning? Do you like the mythology I'm building for you? Come join me, believe it. This is the world I offer you, a world where I'm the leader and I agree with all the things you already believe.
warriors and people that needed help through the Veterans Affairs. So it was a very tedious task. That task alone took me 3 years to rewrite the whole constructs for the
Why
Veterans.
does he have a feather on his wall? He's from the American Southwest, or at least it seemed like he lived there, so he has a lot of that kind of decor.
Affairs.
His fireplace is like terracotta.
Using more naturopath ways to help heal the post-traumatic stress syndromes and the trauma that was being inflicted upon the soldiers.
Fuck off.
Well as I wrote constructs as well to help the land that was being damaged on the other end and the people on the other end in such like Iraq and Afghanistan. So I wrote banking constructs and foreign currency platforms in place to aid the situations where this fraudulent ruse put on by George-Walker-Bush and his minions who know who I am and they know very perfectly well what I did. But I was told specifically by Donald Davis, a U.S. prosecutor, the reason why the federal judicial system was beating me up and kicking my ass is because George Bush told them to do it.
That's not how courts work. The president told the courts to beat him. That's not how this works.
So someday, George-Walker-Bush, you and I are going to get in the same room and we're going to have that talk that you need so very well.
Feels like he vaguely threatened a former president, and like, sure, out of the living former presidents, decent one to do it towards, but like, what? What is this vague threat?
Without punctuation, they become adjective pronouns. In the court-martialing itself, I place their vessel as capital names. So when I say George-Walker-Bush, I have it all in capital letters to identify it as a vessel. The vessel then in the court-martialing was attached with pictures. So the picture correlates the residual imagery of that vessel. That vessel, because it does not have the capacity to think, because the birth certificate system is gone. It ended in 1999, so then the vessel does not control or have the capacity to create thought. Thus, I identified the vessel to capture that vessel and bring it to my location. The militaries of the world...
So you tried to have the court kidnap George W. Bush for you?
Because in order to go into the military branch, you first must go get your log registration at the post office first. But the United States Postal Service lost its authorization because it lost its flag, and it breached its own constructs in violation of the Title 39, Section 101, Subsection A and Subsection B. Therefore, the U.S. Post Office did not have the authorization to register anyone to join the military. This is also fraud put on by the United States Postal Service against the people of this country, and more of a ruse, hiding correctness, hiding me, degrading me, belittling me, engaged in mockingbird, and trying to literally beat me up at every turn and destroy every aspect of my life.
Mosloff says naturopathy for PTSD. Yeah, no, my mom has CPTSD, and it's so difficult to treat. You often need medications and serious therapy. You couldn't or shouldn't be throwing herbs at it. I have CPTSD too. Hooray! Commonality.
Because of that, I've stayed very calm, stayed very neutral, stayed very peaceful in this trying times. But because the condition of state of the world right now, it is my duty to come forward to safeguard not only the finances for the people of the world, the finances of the foreign banking systems of the world, but put a system in place that brings accountability, fairness for all, so that the geniuses of the world can board my platforms, bring their concepts in quantum grammar, either in through one banking construct or another, depending on the needs of that corporation or that person coming forward. And at that point, then I can delegate them into the right platform so that they can bring their concept forward for the people to use without all the red tape. Since December 12th, 2004, we have been...
Is he ideologically related to sovereign citizens? Oh yeah, a lot of the sovereign citizen stuff came from this guy's mentor. So yeah, one sec. I'm gonna turn a fan on, I'm getting warm. Yeah, need a little bit of breeze in here. The air is stagnant.
With the martial law. During the times of martial law, there are no civil authorities, which means states, police departments, judicial systems are all closed.
Did he get ahead of the prompter? He had to pause for a second.
The guidelines for that are filed under the War Powers claims at U.S. SOCOM at MacDill Air Force Base, which I filed in 2007. So there.
Okay. We've been going 3 hours, and I'm pretty overloaded for the day with the nonsense, so I think we're probably going to call it a day, but there is a part of this video that is the most viewed by far, and I'm so curious what it says. So let's watch the part that's the most viewed part of the video, and then we'll call it a night, because I've tortured you enough with this intricate conspiracy nonsense.
That hieroglyphic. It could have been a flag staff, it could have been an eagle staff, it could have been a lot of different symbolisms have been the association or metaphor between that tribe's laws and those who come in and out of contract with it. I honorably, fair and square, have the Title IV 1.9 dimension flag, which I tendered to the world for contract for the federal contractors and the citizens of the world to come and join with, so that when we all live in a peaceful grammar situation where all the terms and full closure is on the table. I was hauled into Wisconsin, and I was hazed up pretty good, beat down, starved down, and I would not surrender the flag.
Oh, he's claiming that he was, like, kidnapped by the government because they believe all his nonsense? I see.
From 186 pounds.
Okay, I'm at 90% grift, 10% true believer now. The fact that he is now making up stories of being, like, kidnapped by the government to give back the flag. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is he's just a scammer.
So 102 pounds. Why? Because they were using food as a weapon. What that means, if I would have touched the food, and when I tried to touch the food, they would haul me down to booking and try to get my fingerprints, which is my personal private property.
That seems specific. First of all, no, your fingerprints are not your private property. If you're being booked into the jail, they're gonna do that. Now I'm suspecting, did he actually get arrested for something legitimate and he was refusing to do fingerprints? And he's framing this in a completely insane way?
They would also then try to check me into their system. But if I did not touch their food, then they would never haul me down into booking and I could live in my peaceful way. So because I was a master of the timelines, I knew exactly when to predict.
He's a master of the timelines, holy shit.
When they would have to join with me, and I got a state district court judge to come off the bench, take off his robe, and sit across the table.
David Wynn Miller just regenerated into this guy. He didn't actually die.
For me, and move me into a location to where I could get nourishment into my body. In that humbling journey, I took many beatdowns. It was cold, I was without clothes, I was all by myself, and I went without food for 70 days. In that mechanic, it was a humbling thing to be without food.
I feel like before 70 days, they would have force-fed you at the jail. Like, people try hunger strikes at jails, and it generally just results in them being force-fed.
I knew full well the whole time, the complete time, what I was doing, why I was doing it, because I was not about to surrender my flag. As things went on, I ended up through the federal judicial system in that case, and ended up at the U.S. Supreme Court, where I became Chief Judge of the U.S. Supreme Court on October 1st, 2004.
No, you can go actually a while without food. You can go weeks without food. I think it's like 3 days to, at max, like 5 or a week without water. I think you can, in theory, go a month and a half or so without food. In theory. It's going to depend on how much stuff you already have, like, stored as adipose tissue to feed off of.
Then I
But no, I don't think a U.S. jail is going to let someone do a hunger strike that long before force-feeding them.
Into the Pentagon, where I kicked off a military court-martialing when my peace treaty was breached, which I went over previously. However, the federal judicial system was not done with me. They were very upset with me because of the court-martialing and the exposure that it had done against the bad guys, George Walker Colin Bush and his minions. They tried to serve me some paperwork, but they didn't serve me. They put it on a piece of the method server for that paperwork, put it on a table 5 feet away from me and told me I was served. I said, no, I'm not served. That table's served.
You were told you were served. You saw the receipt of service. You were served, sir. You were served. You were served. All right. That's it. I'm done with him for the day. I need my brain to not be thinking about this for a while. So we'll be back tomorrow. I have electrolysis tomorrow, but after that, I'll be back and we'll stream again. And then, of course, it'll be Tuesday. Tinfoil Tuesday, which we all love so much. So, thanks for hanging out, everyone. I appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around this stream. I know this one was arduous, so thank you. Love you too, Mr. Blast. Have a great night, everyone, and I hope to see you soon. Like the stream if you're on YouTube. Follow if you're on Twitch, if you haven't already, and that's it. Later.